This beggar boy ended up becoming a mercenary for an insanely powerful noble family. But later on, everyone close to him was used and killed as expendable tools. So, to get his revenge, he stole a legendary grimoire, only to be hunted down by those same nobles and killed. But he was way too stubborn to just stay dead, and with a little help from the grimoire, he regresses back in time to when he was still begging on the streets. Except this time, armed with his brutal mercenary experience and absolute knowledge of the future, he is going to do whatever it takes to completely annihilate that damn family. The story kicks off with a wyvern soaring through the sky. Meanwhile, the target below thinks he just spotted it passing by, and that, watching it fly so free like that, is what made him decide to walk away from the Declan family's great magical estate and retire as a mercenary. But things aren't quite that simple. Right now, this same man is being hunted down, or at least he should be, because he's already taken care of the mook sent after him. The mook asks, dead serious, since when has he been hiding abilities like that? That's not the kind of power a run-of-the-mill mercenary should have. But our prota, confident as ever, just smiles at him, thinking he's way too naive, and asks if that thing is a grimoire. The mook confirms it is. I mean, why else would they come after some nobody hunting dog like him for no reason? Our boy just says that if the trash the Declan hunt sends out are all like him, they'd definitely be coming in droves. Without wasting more time, he wants to know how to use it. Turns out the mook doesn't know either, and from what Aster can tell, he's telling the truth. Because if the greedy Declans knew how to use it, this guy wouldn't be 6 feet under in some basement. And even without knowing how to use it, they still hunted him down for it. That alone tells you how valuable this thing is. So the mook tells him to hand over the grimoire, says he'll beg his boss for mercy, and maybe Aster can go back to being a mercenary. But our prota just smiles at him and asks what kind of power the mercenary guild leader even has to pull that off. Then he lifts the man into the air with his magic, and with a cold stare, asks for his last words. But before he can wrap things up, a new character shows up in the scene. A man wrapped in dark energy, walking slowly toward our boy. He introduces himself as Farin von Declan, the legendary head of the most powerful magic family in the East. That catches our hero off guard. Farin says that if it's not too much trouble, he'd like Aster to hand over the grimoire, and maybe afterward they can talk. Our hero, known as Aster, thinks about how he served the Declan family for decades but never once laid eyes on the mythical Farin in person, the most feared and respected sorcerer in Declan history. Aster studies him closely, trying to figure out what kind of man he's dealing with. But hearing the request, Aster shows zero interest and even plays dumb, says the guy is starting to irritate him, and asks if he really thinks he can just steal something Aster worked this hard for. Farin just laughs, a laugh dripping with arrogance, and our hero feels it in his bones, the crushing weight surrounding him, a force that's completely absurd, so intense he regrets even opening his mouth. Noticing his stubbornness, Farin changes his approach and tells the hero to hand over the book and come back to serve the Declan family. All his crimes will be forgiven. He acknowledges Aster's combat skills, admits he regrets not noticing this insane talent sooner, finds it impressive that some gray zone trash, who only learned garbage techniques, the kind only mercenaries bother with, still managed to reach this level of skill. And with the backing of House Declan, he wonders just how far this kid could go. He finishes by saying that if Aster comes back to his side, he could live under the family's protection. Proposes they team up and build a legacy together. Aster answers sure, he could go for that, but only if Farin hands over the position of family head. A blatantly shameless jab, and it leaves Farin furious. Aster turns to him and asks if he even watched how many people died for this. And with that, he uses his power and finishes off the mook right there on the spot. That sends Farin over the edge. He warns our boy that a stunt like this is going to cost him. But Aster couldn't care less, just says it's worth the risk, already charging at him and calling him out for a duel. Obviously, Farin accepts without a second thought, conjuring a shield with barely any effort, saying he's about to teach this kid some respect. Aster, dripping with confidence, replies that nobody knows if something's big or small unless they actually measure it. The family head says fine then, guess he's putting a leash on this one. He activates his magic and attacks our boy without a hint of worry, barely even trying, and it catches our hero completely off guard. But Aster manages to dodge in time, thinking, so this is the power of the Declan family head. There's not a single opening anywhere. Farin asks if he wasn't the one who said you need to measure something to know its size. Well, there are things you don't need to measure to know. A massive magic circle appears right in front of our hero, and Farin says now he's about to learn the difference between the two of them. It sets off a massive explosion. As the smoke starts to clear, Farin says he didn't kill him, just roughed him up a little. Asks if he wants to negotiate now. But even wounded, our hero stays on his feet. Asks if Farin would take him back if he stopped being a little lapdog again, then answers his own question right after. Of course not. With his face covered in blood, he screams that he's sick of living off dog scraps. Lightning crackles around him as he explodes with fury, saying no one in their right mind would ever choose to live chained up like some fancy decoration in a big house. Farin calls him a fool and makes the entire sky tremble. Purple lightning takes over the air. That's the moment the hero finally understands why he looked up at the sky earlier, and finally realizes what he actually wanted all along. His own freedom. Even with a devastating attack barreling toward him, he doesn't back down. Farin watches this with something like respect, and admits he thought that last hit would have killed him. Asks if he feels the gap in power now, But our boy is still standing, acknowledging just how crushing his enemy's strength really is. Farhan relaxes and says now they can finally talk properly. But what comes next leaves Aster completely stunned. Farhan offers him the position of head of one of the Declan's affiliated families, House Bongshin. Aster is caught off guard and starts thinking about House Bongshin. He remembers that the Declan family, the strongest magic clan on the entire eastern continent, is powerful enough to challenge the throne itself, and now they want him to swear loyalty as one of their vassal houses. This was exactly Aster's plan the whole time. Get the grimoire away from them. Farhan comments that he's underestimating his own worth and says he wants both him and the grimoire. The two lock eyes. Our boy holds up the grimoire and ends up handing it over. Farhan says great, he made the right call, and this wipes his slate clean of every crime he's committed. He takes the grimoire, but to his shock, our boy says the rest of it, the whole glory of becoming part of something like that, is something he definitely doesn't want, and he burns the grimoire right in front of him. That leaves the family head furious, demanding to know what he's doing. Our hero just smiles and asks what he thinks, says yeah, he wanted Farhan to have the grimoire, just never said he wanted him to have all of it. Farhan is livid, says he's not going to die a painless death. But our boy keeps running his mouth, says he never did any of this for money, being a mercenary doesn't even pay that well, so why did he hold on to the grimoire? Because it was tied to money in a different way. Asks if Farhan's ever heard about the mercenaries who got devoured by the Declan family's young master. That hits the family head hard, and he starts recalling that forbidden magic. Our boy confirms it, that bastard devoured his friends, and the Declans covered the whole thing up. Farhan asks if this is about revenge, but our hero smiles again and asks why he'd bother with that. He knows better than anyone that a mercenary's life isn't worth much. Same goes for his friends' lives. He just wanted to do right by what they wanted, but for that, he needed a lot of money. After that, he finally decided to retire and never go back to that kennel again. So Farhan turns away and tells him to treat this as his last words. With a snap of his fingers, blue flames engulf our boy. Farhan declares that this is the Declan family's glorious blue flame, a flame that never goes out. He's meant to burn and regret every choice he's ever made, down to his very last fiber. But our hero just rolls his eyes and asks, regret what exactly? Tells him to go straight to hell. Thinks that between this or being a Declan lapdog, he'd rather go back to the gray zone. And if he can't even do that, dying is honestly the better option. Already burning in the blue flame, he starts laughing, a laugh dripping with something downright sinister, realizing he's never felt this free in his entire life. Shame though, if he could be born again, he'd find real freedom, and he'd absolutely get his revenge on them. But right then, to Aster's shock, a spell activates, converging winds, and the entire blue flame gets completely scattered, catching our boy off guard. Looking around, he has no idea what just happened, and wonders what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, Farhan just stands there, frozen, back turned. As far as Aster can tell, time itself has stopped. He looks around, completely stunned, glancing from one side to the other. That's when he notices the grimoire, still burning in his hand, and suddenly the grimoire starts floating, while multiple magic circles appear over his heart. He wonders what these symbols are, and what the hell is happening to him. Right after that, he finds himself somewhere else, still not understanding how the hell he survived. But he notices something's off, and he can feel it. The place feels familiar, almost like he's back in the gray zone. And that's when it hits him, the memory slamming in with full force. He really is back in the gray zone, the same place he fought to survive before becoming a mercenary. He thinks none of this makes sense, but he genuinely went back in time. Still a little dazed, he starts looking himself over and realizes his body is younger. But the mark is still there, those magic circles still burned into him. Seeing that, he figures the grimoire must be behind all this, and the fact that Farhan personally went after that book already proves how important it really was. Thinking it over, going back in time might actually be a good thing. It's basically a second chance. In the end, maybe it was all worth it. Aster thinks this feels way too real to be a dream, so he's pretty sure it's not one. The stench of the sewer alone is too real to be a dream. Thinking about it, he actually gets pretty pumped about this new shot at success, whatever it takes. He starts remembering he used to have a dream, an old one that used to belong to his friends too. That was actually one of the reasons he decided to retire in the first place. He remembers a conversation he had with a friend back in the day. Remembers the guy telling him they were born beggars in the gray zone, with nothing, no clothes, no food, not even an education. His friend asks which one he thinks was the worst. Aster says it was the hunger, but his friend says if it was just hunger, they wouldn't still be stuck here. Asks what he thinks actually wrecked their lives. Aster says he's genuinely fine with how things turned out, but his friend gets irritated, starts saying the real reason their lives went down the drain, only for Aster to cut him off, repeating that he already said he's fine with it. His friend gets even more pissed, glaring at him with real anger. Aster apologizes and tells him to keep going. His friend explains that not having an education was the worst part. If they'd been able to study, they wouldn't have ended up enslaved by those damn nobles. Says he wanted to build a library, one where anyone could read for free. Our boy, inspired, dreams even bigger, says he wants to build a massive tower packed with books and put the Declan family's own techniques right at the entrance on the first floor. Anyone, beggar or butcher, could learn the techniques of the family that enslaved them. Just picturing it gets him hyped. The only problem would be actually getting the books, but that's a problem for future him to figure out. Deep down, his real goal was simple: spread the Declan family's secrets until they crumble completely. But his little moment of reflection ends brutally, with a kick to the face. A boy shows up, completely furious, screaming at him about something he didn't even do, and starts kicking him without mercy. Caught off guard, Aster lets his mercenary instincts take over, blocks one of the hits, and calmly points out that he's taken his share of kicks, and now it's time to give back 10. He braces for the counterattack, but quickly realizes his mistake when he hears the sound of bones cracking. To his shock, his own hand just got fractured. The attacker calls him crazy for hitting someone older, throws him to the ground, and keeps beating on him. Every hit hurts his body, but what really breaks is his pride. Spotting an opening, he pushes the kid back, sending him tumbling into the sewer channel. Seeing his chance to run, he doesn't think twice and takes off. The other boy gets up coughing and asks where that little punk went. But Aster, already long gone, thinks he's not running away. This is just a tactical retreat. And he swears to himself he'll remember that face, along with the 57 hits he just took. After all, a mercenary never forgets. Once he puts some distance behind him, he realizes he's in trouble. His wrist is throbbing and he can barely even close his hand. He sits down, completely defeated, and just sighs. Realizes that with a body this weak, his dream tower is going to have to wait a long time. Priority number 1 right now is fixing and strengthening his own body. But right then, a childish voice cuts through, interrupting everything. A white-haired kid shows up and asks if he's hungry. The hero eyes him with suspicion and asks if he knows him. The boy shakes his head, but Aster notices, from the expensive clothes worn out as they are, that this kid is the son of some noble who's fallen on hard times. Basically a walking time bomb ready to go off. The boy introduces himself as Damien, son of a woman named Bianca. Our hero feels like he's hearing things he really shouldn't be hearing, and, a little impatient, asks if the kid's slow or something. Damien, all innocence, just says out of nowhere that he doesn't have a mom. Our hero feels a brief tightness in his chest, but covers it with a joke, saying it's time for them to go their separate ways. Thinks it's better not to get tangled up with this walking time bomb, and decides to send him off before things get worse. But Damien just stands there, staring right at Aster. Aster asks if he's not leaving. Damien insists on tagging along anyway. Our hero tries to shake him off, even considers smacking him a little, but the kid notices his injured wrist and asks if it hurts. Before Aster can even answer, Damien places a hand right over the wound, and a warm, gentle heat spreads through it, healing him instantly. Aster is completely floored, recognizing that magic right away. The light of healing, a secret technique of House Blander, one that fell into ruin thanks to the Declan family. His instincts are screaming that this is extremely dangerous. Why would a Blandor kid be standing right in front of him, of all times, in this exact era? He repeats the name in his head, Damien. That's when it hits him, something crucial. A Blandor with mismatched eyes. His blood runs cold. He realizes the truth. This kid isn't just anyone. This is Damien von Blandor, the monster that doesn't die, not even when he's dead. While our boy feels a wave of tremendous danger standing right in front of him, Damien just crouches down and starts watching some ants. Aster wonders if they're really talking about the same person. Our boy starts remembering the past, going back to when he still worked as a mercenary, sent out to House Blandor's territory. He and his friends used to complain about how ridiculous it was that they had to do work that should have been House Blandor's own job in the first place. During the conversation, one of them brings up rumors of a monster attacking those lands, some creature that had already killed dozens of people. They wonder what kind of monster it could be, an ogre maybe, or something like that. But Aster remembers what he actually saw was nothing like that. What he witnessed was something way worse. One brother tearing the other apart, and that guy was Damien. He fought non-stop, wearing an unhinged grin, using healing magic to stay on his feet when he should have already been dead. A true butcher gone insane, a man who couldn't even die after dying. The flashback ends there, and the scene cuts back to the present. Standing in front of him is Damien, now just an innocent kid watching ants on the ground. Aster is completely floored, unable to reconcile that image of a brutal killer with this scrawny little child. He wonders why the heir of House Blandor, the Lord's only son, would be living a life this miserable. But Damien cuts him off, going on about food, says that according to his mom, eating well keeps sickness away, and that Aster is sick because he doesn't eat right. The kid actually agrees with the logic, but finds his way of talking pretty pushy, and wonders if Damien's even got any money. To Aster's surprise, the kid pulls out a heavy pouch and reveals a bunch of gold coins glinting right in front of him, asking if that's what he means. Aster goes completely silent for a second, then smiles in approval, and declares that starting today, right this instant, they're best friends. Throws an arm over him and says friends share everything they've got. Then he pulls Damien along to find an inn and something to eat. Damien asks if our boy has anything to share, and he answers smiling that yeah, he's got a friend, meaning Damien himself. After they take a bath, Aster feels recharged and starts watching Damien explore the place above the restaurant, admiring everything. The kid mentions this is the first time he's ever seen a place like this, since he's always slept out on the street. In the middle of the conversation, he mentions he doesn't have a dad. Our boy, joking around, just says of course he does, everyone's got a dad. The two get into a whole argument about it, a dumb, childish argument, until Aster wonders why the hell they're even competing over something like this. Right after, he asks about Damien's mom. The kid looks around before answering that she's not here. The answer leaves Aster intrigued, his head full of guesses. He decides to dig a little deeper and asks how long Damien's been on his own. The kid thinks about it for a second and answers that since he ran away from home, he slept 10 times. Aster starts doing the math, figuring that if he slept 10 times, that's 10 days. But Damien explains he can sleep twice a day, counting naps. Aster recalculates. So he ran away about 3 days ago, 4 at most. But he gets confused when the kid adds that this last time, he didn't take a single nap. And that's more than enough for Aster to conclude that this kid is definitely a little unhinged. Even so, he starts sketching out his future plans, realizes having Damien around could turn out to be a valuable opportunity. The kid could act as a kind of protection, on top of being a direct connection to the powerful House Blander. Something that could come in handy for the future fight against the Declans. And of course, noble houses have plenty of books he needs to study. But before anything else, he has some urgent business to take care of. His 57-hit revenge against the kid who jumped him. He tells Damien he's going to lie down and asks not to be bothered. The kid asks if he's about to do breathing exercises. Aster confirms and tells Damien to do the same afterward. In total silence, he starts slipping into meditation, sinking into memories of the past. He remembers how much he used to rely on magic formulas and how he managed to work past them. He stole techniques from all kinds of noble houses, coming close to death more times than he could count along the way. Learned secret arts, but none of them came anywhere near Farin's power. This time though, he decides to master something completely different. The fundamental art of House Declan, the legendary art of the Celestial Fountain. He'd memorized it in his past life for research purposes, and now he plans to use it fully. The moment he starts activating the technique, a sharp heat spreads through his whole body, and he discovers impurities in his mana circuits. So he turns to a secret power, Mana Rain, an elite technique used to purify one's bloodline. Once the process finishes, he wakes up and realizes his magic circles are clean, filled with purified mana, maybe even more than in his past life. Still, he believes taking down the Declans remains a near impossible task, but his odds are a little better now. And, being a man who never gives up, he holds firm to his purpose, revenge and freedom. The next day, Damien wakes up and is startled by his own brown hair. He realizes Aster secretly changed his hair color, along with his clothes, so House Blander wouldn't recognize him. The kid asks what they're doing now. Our hero answers with a grin that it's time to crack some skulls. Meanwhile, the kid who beat up Aster wakes up from a nap. Then his eyes go wide, seeing the hero standing there. He quickly asks where Aster's been, noticing how clean he looks now, and also clocking Damien standing beside him. Judging by their clothes, they look like they've got money. But to his shock, out of nowhere, our boy lands a devastating punch right on him, knocking him flat. Calmly, Aster says he remembers that face just fine, and that's more than enough. He starts counting the hits. 1, 2, 3, working his way toward 57. Right then, two boys from the neighborhood hear the commotion. Soon a crowd gathers around the two of them, and everyone's shocked watching what Aster's doing to that punk. With a wide grin on his face, Aster scans the crowd and recognizes a few familiar faces. Decides to see how far he can push things this time, with his little buddy Damien right beside him. The intense brawl kicks off, and Aster completely dominates, dropping every single opponent with punches wrapped in magical energy. While our boy shows off his skill, Damien just watches, totally blown away by his new friend. Aster decides to teach him something important. Tells Damien that in moments like this, he should narrate what he's seeing with some flair and excitement. Damien, super hyped, starts shouting that Aster's amazing. Aster gets it now. This is exactly why people say that stuff. And Damien gets even more pumped, following the fight closely. Soon he walks over to the first kid down on the ground, offering to heal his injuries. But Aster stops him, grabbing him by the collar and asking how many hits the guy took. Without waiting for an answer, he grabs a piece of wood and delivers a hard smack to the kid's backside, making him stammer, completely terrified, unable to remember the exact number. But Aster doesn't care, turns to Damien and says it's his turn now. Grinning, Damien starts using his healing touch, only for the injured kid to start screaming in pain, begging them to stop. Aster stays completely unmoved, insisting the debt hasn't been paid yet. 20 more hits left. The punk starts calling him a demon, absolutely desperate. Once everything finally wraps up, one of the boys walks up to our boy, exhausted but respectful, and greets him. Aster feels a certain pride about it. He did what he set out to do, and dished out 1,000 hits total, 100 to each of them. It was quite the challenge, honestly. The exhausted boys ask for permission to leave. Aster says sure, they can go, but one of them mentions that guy was actually from their own house, and asks if he still wants them gone anyway. Aster, a bit annoyed, asks if he's not pushing his luck. Not wanting another beating, the boys say no, They're already leaving. They take off running as far away as possible. Aster sighs, realizing he's now homeless. But suddenly he senses a presence closing in. The movement is fast and precise, like a professional mercenary. He figures they're being hunted, maybe by Houseblander itself. But with barely any mana left, he can't cast spells. Still, he remembers who he is, a mercenary used to surviving in tight spots. He quickly channels every bit of his energy, compressing it into a single strike. Realizes he's only got one shot, and that it'll have to be enough. He feels the pursuer getting closer. When the pursuer finally shows up, our boy already has his attack aimed straight at him, only to freeze in shock realizing the man isn't an enemy at all, just an elderly man. The newcomer starts shouting, dropping to his knees in front of young Master Damien, who looks completely startled recognizing Alfred. The old man says he has no idea how long he's been searching for him, and asks where he's been and what he's been doing. The poor butler couldn't sleep a wink, worried sick about the young master. Damien tries to pull away from him, telling him to get lost. But Alfred refuses, says he's not letting go until Damien's back home with his family. He starts demanding to know why he ran away, and what the hell happened. Our boy watches the whole scene, thoroughly annoyed. After calming down a bit, Alfred holds on to Damien and apologizes for the scene he's caused. Introduces himself as Alfred, head butler of Houseblander, visibly relieved to have finally found Damien. Our hero answers, says his name is Aster. The butler picks up on the connection between Aster and Damien, and invites him to visit the Blander residence. Our hero hesitates for a moment, knowing full well how nobles tend to look down on commoners. But in the end, he accepts the invitation, seeing it as a solid opportunity. After all, House Blandor controls access to the city of Hazen, home to the Zenian Academy and its massive library. He figures the invitation's just a small detour on his path. With a smile, Aster looks at Damien and says maybe House Blandor's food is worth checking out. A few hours later, the two arrive at the imposing mansion. Alfred mentions it's already late, suggests they get some rest, and hands them off to a maid named Lancy. Lancy agrees, and politely asks young Master Damien to follow her. Damien gets visibly nervous talking to her, and when Lancy tries to lead him away, the kid panics, screaming and apologizing frantically. Meanwhile, in another part of the mansion, a door slams open. A woman, clearly the lady of the house, asks Alfred where Damien is. He answers that he found him in the gray zone, and that he's already on his way home. The woman reacts furiously, launching a powerful spell straight up, which explodes rapidly in the air. Desperate, she demands to know if Damien's okay, and swears there'll be consequences if anything happened to him. Alfred quickly calms her down, explaining everything that happened. After hearing it all, she sighs, looking relieved that her son is fine, and thanks the butler. Meanwhile, Alfred thinks it was a stroke of luck, both for her and for whoever it was that touched the young master. After all, this woman was once known as the feared Blood Witch, and he knows full well that with her fierce temper, things could have ended a lot worse. After he finishes explaining everything, the woman thanks him again. Alfred then brings up something curious, mentions the young master's friend, the boy Aster, notes that the kid sensed his presence and was already braced to fight him before he'd even shown up, says Aster had a mana bullet ready to fire at a moment's notice. Deeply impressed, the woman acknowledges the kid's talent, especially coming from the gray zone. With that in mind, Alfred asks her for a small favor. Later on, he finds Aster again and makes him an unexpected offer. He wants the boy to become his successor. Alfred speaks with total confidence, practically certain the kid won't say no, explaining this is a rare shot for someone from the gray zone to earn real wealth and status. But to the old man's shock, Aster just stares back at him coldly and flatly says he's not interested. The old man is stunned, wondering what the kid just said and whether he actually heard him right. Damien shows up quickly and asks his friend what he means by that. Aster thanks Alfred for wanting to make him his successor, but says he prefers things the way they are, cutting Damien off in the process and finishing by saying he's genuinely grateful for the offer. Alfred is caught off guard, wondering why, but quickly picks up on something, thinking this is arrogance talking. Since Aster was born with nothing in the gray zone and learned magic purely off his own talent, he sees himself as above everyone else. Alfred starts saying he gets it. He came from an ordinary family too, and he was arrogant when he was young, before realizing just how vast the world really was. Aster, though, shows nothing but boredom, thinking this whole conversation is a waste of time. But Alfred keeps going, says that right now Aster probably thinks he can do anything, even conquer the world. Aster replies that's not how he thinks at all. The butler gets even more irritated and starts comparing him to the goblins of the valley, creatures that have no idea what real danger looks like out there. Aster fires back that he wouldn't be a goblin, he'd be more like a wyvern. And that's the last straw for Alfred, who decides to show him just how vast the world really is, because he wants him to understand exactly how terrifying it can be. He takes Aster to a massive hall, revealing a row of young trainees lined up, who quickly greet the head butler. Alfred asks for Aster's opinion, saying everyone here represents House Blandor's top talent, all his age. The kid takes it in silently, and has to admit they're genuinely impressive, but locking eyes with them, he thinks sarcastically that all he's seeing is goblins. Alfred asks if he'd accept the offer now, promising he could shine just like them, or even brighter, but Aster answers without hesitation that he's not into shining, which pisses Alfred off pretty badly. Right then, among the trainees, the rookie Winster steps forward, wearing a smug, mocking grin, telling Alfred that if this kid had any sense of self-worth, he wouldn't have turned it down. And since he did turn it down, it just proves he doesn't get the weight of the position, or the talent standing in this hall. So Winster offers to give Aster a little demonstration, suggesting a duel. Alfred thinks it's a bold call, but ends up going along with it anyway. Realizing he's already inconvenienced everyone in the room, Aster accepts on the spot. But first he asks Alfred to pick his opponents for him. Alfred allows it. Aster steps forward, points at Winster plus 4 other trainees, and says he'll take on all 5 at once, leaving the whole group in shock. Laughing and mocking them, he says if they're scared they might as well just drop dead now. Alfred is stunned at first, but then starts laughing, thinking yeah, that's exactly the kind of spirit his successor should have. Before anything starts though, he warns Aster that those words could come off as an insult. Aster answers, confident that he's ready for it. With that, the rules get set. Aster needs to last 1 minute, and if he manages it, he wins a prize. But if he fails, he'll have to answer for his words, which he understands basically means being forced into becoming the next butler. A clear attempt to trap him in this place. Still, he accepts. While he gets ready, Instructor Runfit, the one in charge of the trainees, shows real concern, telling Alfred this duel is way too dangerous. Alfred replies that the risk is exactly what makes the experience worth it, and that breaking this kid's stubborn streak is the only way to make him grow. The instructor, on the other hand, is deeply on edge, worried that if Aster gets hurt, he could end up losing his job over it. Off in the corner, watching everything, Damien stands next to Lancey. The instructor goes over to the young master, begging him to talk Alfred out of it, saying this duel could end badly. But Damien seems more hyped than anyone else there, which only makes the instructor more nervous. Right then Lancey steps in, reminding Damien that his mother would scold him if he got involved in this. That's enough to make him back off. With that, Alfred orders the instructor to start the duel. The man, resigned, just follows the order. Lancey, standing next to Damien, tells him she'll be right back and asks him not to interfere. He smiles at her, saying he understands. The instructor walks over to the fighters and starts laying out the rules. A turn-based match. Aster mentally scoffs at that, figuring this looks a lot more like an annihilation match than any kind of training. The instructor keeps going, explaining the duel only ends once one side gives up. Winster basically mocks him at that point, calling Aster a total mutt who just got lucky, promising he's about to get crushed. Right after he says it, the instructor gives the signal to start, and the fighters begin closing in. Aster reacts fast, launching a direct attack at Winster, landing a powerful hit right on his chest. The trainee screams in pain, completely stunned, while our boy starts making his point clear, that he's the one about to teach them all a lesson. Holding up a mana bullet, he says the first lesson is simple. The smallest peppers pack the biggest kick. Recognizing the move, the crowd is left speechless, and Aster mocks the technique himself, calling it just basic mana manipulation, useless in real combat. But right after, he delivers the second lesson: never judge people before you know them. The next moment, he fires off his mana bullet, which explodes with insane force, sending all 5 trainees flying through the air. With a calm look on his face, he comments that the world is vast and bitter, then immediately lands a punch square on Winstor's face. Says he can teach every single one of them whatever lesson they need, and that they'd better study up. Winstor, meanwhile, is completely dazed and furious, screaming that this is insane, that this isn't real magic. But Aster moves in fast, saying, yeah, this is magic, it's called body magic. Watching all this, the instructor was in shock, while Alfred kept his eyes on Aster, crushing every opponent. He studied the technique closely, and realized the mana bullet had been compressed 3 or 4 times over. A chill ran down his spine just imagining what would have happened if that shot had been aimed at him. It definitely would have been dangerous. But deep down, Alfred couldn't help but admire him for that monstrous, innate mana control. Then, out of nowhere, he felt a familiar presence, and spun around, startled, as Lady Bianca walked in. The instructor, meanwhile, just let out a sigh of relief, figuring she'd come to save them from the whole mess. Lady Bianca surveyed the training field, chaos and injured trainees everywhere, and asked what exactly had just happened. Alfred, hesitant, answered that it was just a test. His lady shot a cold look around the room, clearly not buying that explanation, and asked with a touch of sarcasm if that's what he called a test. Without wasting another second, she ordered Alfred to gather the trainees and clear out, then told Damien and Aster to head back to their rooms. She just thought to herself, what a shame, the fun's over. Lady Bianca kept going, turning directly to Instructor Runfit, and with a single word fired him on the spot, leaving the man standing there, head down, in silence. Then she turned back to Alfred, telling him he'd gone way too far. Alfred quickly apologized, saying he was ready to take whatever punishment came his way. But instead of scolding him, she changed the subject and asked for the details of the duel, asking whether Damien had helped Aster in any way. Alfred said no, explaining the kid had been shockingly skilled in combat, and added that the mana bullet he used had been compressed 3 or 4 times, something Lady Bianca immediately clocked as absurdly excellent mana control. She couldn't even hide how impressed she was. Curious, she asked if he'd taken down 5 trainees with a single bullet. Alfred confirmed it, said Aster did it all on his own. So she asked about the offer Alfred had made the kid. When she found out Aster had turned it down, a faint smile crossed her face. His refusal sparked her interest, and she decided she wanted to size him up herself. She ordered that he be brought to her office. Sometime later, the scene cuts to her office, where our boy's been summoned to meet her. She receives him with all her usual elegance, inviting him to sit. Damien's right there beside her, munching on some food. Aster tells her he got word of the summons, but stays calm the whole time, not showing a flicker of nervousness. Lady Bianca sets a small box on the table in front of him, explaining she'd heard about the gift Alfred had promised him. Aster remembers that right away. He just hadn't expected her to have something ready this fast. She asks him to open the box. Inside is a high-grade elixir, a rare and valuable item, which genuinely catches Aster off guard. But he starts getting suspicious almost immediately, knowing full well that gifts this generous usually come with strings attached. Bianca picks up on his hesitation and quickly reassures him, saying the elixir is simply a reward for helping Damien and an apology for what happened during the duel. Even so, Aster stays wary and asks if accepting the elixir would tie him to House Blandor. She says no. He asks if it's poison. She swears it isn't. Still, he pushes for one last confirmation that there's no hidden catch anywhere. Lady Bianca confirms it again. Only then does Aster thank her and accept the gift. For him, it's honestly a lucky break he didn't see coming. But before he can even relax, Lady Bianca says she has another proposal. Aster sighs internally. He had a feeling this was coming. She offers him a scholarship so he can attend the academy alongside Damien. Explains the boy should have started his studies the year before, but refused to go. That's why she wants Aster's help, since Damien looks up to him. Aster confirms it. Yeah, he can tell Damien admires him, and he also picks up on how tricky Lady Bianca's position really is. If she forces Damien to go, the kid will just run off again. Aster thinks it over for a moment. Studying at the academy is a solid opportunity, and the connections he could make there are worth a lot. But he also feels himself getting pulled deeper into House Blandor's affairs. In the end, he tells her he'll think about it. Lady Bianca agrees, and asks him to let her know once he's decided. But before he can leave, she calls him back one more time, and asks why he turned down Alfred's offer. Aster just smiles, and says his knees are far too precious to him, leaving Lady Bianca pretty stunned by the answer. On the other side of the door, in another corner of the room, Alfred can only wonder what kind of ballsy answer that even was. That night, after getting his hands on the elixir, Aster sits down and starts absorbing that energy. He's caught off guard by the massive boost to his mana, and wonders if all that efficiency comes down to his new physical build. Normally, absorbing spiritual power causes some kind of pushback in the body, but he feels nothing. It's way more effective than he expected. After that, his thoughts drift toward the academy. After mulling it over, he decides he's made up his mind. There are plenty of upsides to enrolling, the biggest one being how much easier it'll be to land a sponsor. Still, Aster can't shake the feeling that he's walking straight into a trap, and decides to take a walk to clear his head. But just as he's about to step out, a platinum-haired kid stops him cold and asks if he's Aster. Looking at the kid's face, Aster figures this must be the Branch family's kid. Feeling a little irritated, he denies being Aster. The kid looks pretty surprised, but doesn't back down, and keeps firing off sarcastic little jabs, ripping into Aster's gray hair and his uncomfortable eyes. Our boy, annoyed, calmly points out that hair color changes depending on the lighting, and asks, with fake innocence, exactly how his eyes could possibly be uncomfortable. Flustered, the kid backpedals fast, admits Aster's eyes actually look kind, and apologizes for the mix-up before turning to leave. But right then, Alfred comes running up to Aster, begging for forgiveness and saying he hasn't slept a wink from worry. Aster thinks, a little resentfully, that the guy really shouldn't be humbling himself like that over some butler. But the platinum-haired brat spins back around and starts shouting that he was right all along, insisting that Aster's stare, like some dead-eyed goblin, definitely isn't normal. Aster calmly confirms his identity right then and there. Completely furious now, the kid starts calling him a liar, hissing death threats under his breath. But Alfred's sharp glare shuts him up instantly, and the kid starts backing off, demanding that Aster show up at the magic hall later to fix his bad attitude. Aster just shrugs and agrees, not bothered in the slightest. Once the kid's gone, Alfred asks if something's wrong. Aster just smiles, says there's nothing to worry about. Figuring the timing's actually perfect, Aster turns to Alfred and asks if he can see the lady of the house. A few minutes later, Lady Bianca receives him in her office, and immediately asks if he's made a decision about her offer. With a confident smile, Aster confirms he's going to enroll, which surprises Lady Bianca given how fast the decision came. Still, she's pleased, tells him to make himself comfortable, and thanks him before he heads out. The moment Aster's gone, Alfred steps into the room. Lady Bianca, delighted, tells him his offer landed. Alfred, for his part, can't hide his excitement, saying that's exactly what he expected from a kid with that kind of fire, that burning look in his eyes. He starts laying out his plan for Lady Bianca, mentions that the first semester will be smooth sailing for Aster, since the family will cover his expenses. But by the second semester, the kid's going to start struggling to cover the academy's steep fees. Alfred predicts Aster will get anxious, and that's exactly the moment he'll step in as his personal sponsor. Hearing this, Lady Bianca cuts him off right away, telling him he's making way too much noise about it. Alfred, embarrassed, just apologizes and leaves. After he's gone, Bianca thinks over his plan, finding it pretty naive, but she realizes his confidence comes from the fact that he himself was won over by a similar move once upon a time. In the end, she just feels sorry for him, calling him a poor soul. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the mansion, Aster walks toward the magic hall, where the Branch family kid is waiting. When he arrives, he's greeted by a strange, fully hooded figure, who asks why he's there. Aster hesitates for a second, realizing he doesn't even know that kid's name. But the hooded figure seems to already be expecting him. After the greetings, he leads Aster to a door, warning him to watch his head. The moment Aster opens the door, he understands the warning. A storm of papers comes flying straight at him. Once the dust settles, someone standing right in front of him asks if he's really Aster, and says it's a pleasure to meet him. This man, with platinum hair and sharp eyes, introduces himself as Wenji von Blandor, and asks if Aster came to see his little brother. Aster, confused, asks, "Brother?" And it clicks. That annoying little brat had gone and called his own older brother on him. Our boy starts thinking back on the past, and figures that if there's one thing he picked up bouncing around different academies, it's that mages who study too hard eventually earn the nickname Quillheads. The signs are well known. First, messy hair, from pulling on it so much it just stops growing back right. From there, they go through stages. Stage 1, they deny their hair's thinning and wear a hood to hide it. Stage 2, they give up denying it and just accept it. Stage 3, they shave their heads completely. And the final stage, they try to make the impossible possible, chasing a spell to regrow hair, something nobody's ever managed to pull off. But this guy standing in front of him is nothing like that. Wenji starts by saying he wants to apologize first. He'd been wondering if his little brother acted that way out of jealousy, but he's confident the young master's guest wouldn't have made such a rude mistake. Aster doesn't react at all, just thinks this guy's impressive, and pretty young too. He asks Wenji if he happens to work at the Magic Academy. Wenji confirms he does, currently serving as Vice Dean, which throws Aster off, thinking about how rare it is to see a Vice Dean this young. And a family as prestigious as the Blanders definitely wouldn't stick a branch member in that seat without good reason, which means he's genuinely got the chops for it. Wenji's a little surprised by the way Aster's staring at him, and comments that the young master's a bit different from your typical rebellious noble kid. Aster asks, "Is that right?" remembering that mages from that world usually walk around with deep bags under their eyes, but this guy, no bags at all, and he's got that smile on top of it. Definitely a different breed. Still, Aster senses they click pretty well. Wenji asks, by the way, if Aster got talked into enrolling at Zenian Academy, and congratulates him. Our excited boy just says thanks. Wenji goes on about what a great opportunity it is, how much there is to learn there, and mentions he actually graduated from Zenian himself, class 145, to be exact. After he says that, Aster starts wondering if this is his way of trying to get closer, using the academy as an icebreaker. Wenji catches himself and apologizes, saying he got carried away since Aster's about to start at Zenian, just rambling on for no reason. Suggests they get back to the actual point. Aster asks what the actual point is. Wenji says there's something he'd like to confirm first. Asks if, hypothetically, Aster would risk his life for a friend. That genuinely rattles our boy, who wonders what the hell this guy's even getting at. Wenji says that's exactly what's been weighing on him, House Blandor's reputation. And if Aster's willing to risk his life, he'll hand him this book. Aster eyes the cover, wondering if this is actually the Blandor family's secret, the hidden text on the Light of Healing. The next morning, in the greenhouse, the lady of the house tends to her garden, lost in thought. As she trims the plants, she thinks about how, ever since Damien left for the academy, something that used to give her such a headache, it's all gone surprisingly smooth. One less thing to worry about. She thinks about Aster. That kid's a great friend, and his talent's solid too. His personality's a little odd, and even though Alfred says he can be a little brat sometimes, he's got a shameless streak in him, but honestly, everyone's a little like that at that age. Still, what she likes most about him is that even after finding out where Damien really came from, his attitude never changed one bit. He's different, no question, and that's exactly why he deserves to be by Damien's side. But because of that very same thing, he doesn't really belong anywhere. He's like a bird outside the cage. There are plenty of ways to keep people close, and she needs to figure one out, in whatever time she has for Damien's sake. She can't afford to lose someone with that much talent. Back to our boy. He's still staring at that book, still wondering if it's really the Blandor secret. He realizes this could be a trap, and locks eyes with Wenji. Those pale, transparent eyes, maybe that's exactly why he can't read him. Usually, whether someone's good or bad, their eyes give something away. But this guy's like a flawless killer, no emotion whatsoever. In other words, it's like he's wearing a mask so convincing not even he knows what's underneath it anymore. Wenji says this isn't something to take lightly, and that he can't afford to let his guard down in his response just because of what's sitting right in front of him. Aster says he'll answer, and that he hates this kind of thing, which genuinely surprises Wenji. Our hero feels more confident now, thinking there's no reason to feel uneasy if they're both in the same boat. Tells Wenji, look, if there's something he wants to know, he can just say it. If it's doable, he'll do it. If it's not, he definitely won't. Wenji turns dead serious, and says just hearing this could put Aster's life at risk, and if he hears it and refuses, Wenji might need to kill him. Aster glares back at him, a little irritated, and says fine, kill him then, Wenji's only got one life to live. Aster thinks to himself, well, this happens to be his second one. That's when Wenji snaps, visibly furious, and starts letting his power surge, standing up from the table as the whole room shakes, trying to spook Aster. But Aster doesn't so much as flinch, just stares right back at him. After that, Wenji just smiles and admits he really can't go through with it, says the young master Aster passed the test, and that he's going to lay it all out straight. The truth is, he needs someone he can actually trust, and that person can't be from House Blandor. Hearing that, our boy thinks he nearly decked him as hard as he could. Wenji goes on, saying to be exact, he's got other expectations too. Not everyone born in the gray zone is the same, and young Master Damien's still too young. He probably doesn't have a great read on people yet, but given that he comes from a family with such a big reputation, there must be something behind him keeping someone from the gray zone right next to his own son. He figured there had to be more to it. Our boy puts it together and asks, so his little brother got into a fight with the guest. Is that it? Wenji says he needs to pick one. Does he want the casual version or the formal one? Aster just tells him to forget it. Wenji says, well, anyway, seems like a decent excuse just came up. The little brother and the guest ended up fighting, so the older brother's calling them both in for a chat. Our boy wonders what he means by lucky, and whether there's some reason the vice dean wants to use his brother as an excuse to drag him into some kind of conflict. Wonders what he's actually after. Wenji asks, how about this? It was a genuinely tough spot to get pulled into, seeing as he's not caught up in any internal conflict, and House Blandor is extremely close-knit, which means someone's watching him on behalf of House Declan. Our boy wonders, House Declan, what does that mean, and asks Wenji why. Wenji says, since he claims he's not afraid of dying, he'll be blunt. Even though he has no intention of killing him, the truth is, he's currently researching the celestial origin magic of House Declan, something that shocks our hero to his core. Wenji keeps talking about what he's uncovered, but catches Aster's reaction and realizes he already knows about celestial origin magic, a secret Declan technique meant only for their own bloodline. Says he managed to crack it open through sheer effort. Aster quickly cuts him off, telling him to hold on, and asks, shouldn't he be dead for researching something like that? How's he still alive? And if he's researching it while tied to House Blandor, why hasn't he looked for a way to destroy it instead? Wenji says he doesn't really know why, but House Declan's a bit of an outlier in that regard. If they found out he'd been researching it, even he, the Vice Dean, would be killed. But he admits that at first he studied it with the intention of destroying it. Asks if Aster can understand this. Celestial origin magic is the root of every single secret art the Declans have. He imagines some kind of supplementary method that could improve on that secret technique, one that's already perfect on its own. That's exactly why he can't bring himself to destroy it, and asks, if Aster were in his shoes, would he get it? Aster feels a wave of concern, and thinks this guy isn't just crazy, he's completely off the deep end. Aster confirms it. Wenji's completely out of his mind, running that research right inside his own family's territory. And suddenly, everything clicks with the events of his past life. He understands now, this is exactly why the Declan family wiped out the Blandors. It was Wenji's research into this new technique. Farron saw the massive potential in it and decided to act. Across the table, Wenji notices Aster's silence, and asks if he's having second thoughts. But our boy ignores that, and steers things back to the main question, wanting to know why he was even brought in. Wenji explains he hasn't told his own family a thing about the research, but he suspects the Declans might have planted a spy, someone tracking his progress. Probably let an incomplete formula slip out on purpose, as bait, as a trap. Wenji starts laughing, and admits it was actually him who leaked part of the formula, just to mess with them. Aster asks why he doesn't just team up with the Declans instead. Wenji answers that he's got personal reasons, and needs Aster for a secret job, since he's got zero ties to House Blandor. Explains the research is a collaboration, but he's hit a wall on one part, and asks Aster to deliver a thesis to Professor Perun at Zenian Academy. Promises a solid reward in return, the Light of Healing spell. Aster sees a golden opportunity here, and immediately agrees, but decides to raise the stakes. Proposes getting the Light of Healing spell up front, as collateral, and once the new formula for the Declan magic is ready, he wants that too. Reasons that this way, the two of them become real partners, in the same boat, all or nothing. Wenji thinks that's bold, but impressive all the same. The logic behind the ask is simple and clear. After thinking it over for a moment, Wenji agrees. Says the name of the technique doesn't really matter right now anyway, since Aster doesn't have the foundation to use this new version yet, but promises to hand it over once it's ready. He sets one condition though. Until the thesis is fully finished, he might need Aster's help again, and hopes he'll keep backing the work. Aster agrees on the spot, as long as it's tied to the thesis. Grabs the papers and jokes that he can't read a word of any of it. For a second, Wenji freezes up, but Aster quickly admits he's just messing with him, which gets Wenji grumbling that he's rude and boring. Aster then asks about Professor Perun, whether he can be trusted. Wenji just laughs, says he's always been in competition with Perun for the top spot at the academy, even back when he was still a teaching assistant, but that he's always stayed one step ahead, even after coming back to House Blandor. Aster thinks to himself that this world is a genuinely miserable place, full of sharks like Wenji. Later that night, in his room, Damien asks why he keeps so much stuff in his subspace. Digging through the books, Aster finds a sealed letter, closed with red wax. He opens it and reads the address. To my dear Aster. He scoffs at the word dear, but recognizes it's from Wenji, explaining these are the magical texts he's supposed to study for the future. Wenji even wrote out a whole approach to learning, so Aster could build the kind of intellect that matches his new status. Aster looks over the stack of books, around 132 of them, including the Light of Healing spell and the thesis on the new technique. Admits it's honestly an incredible gift and has to acknowledge that Wenji's a genuine genius, capable of laying out an entire learning path, basic to advanced, but also a complete lunatic. All things considered, not too bad a combination. He sits down to write and starts putting together a list of possible sponsors for his future tower. The first name on it, Wenji von Blandor. He realizes these 132 books aren't just isolated volumes, they're a complete body of knowledge, capable of building a rock-solid foundation for any aspiring mage. Before, he just wanted to stockpile books. Now he understands this collection will actually be the tower's true identity, a place that offers knowledge to anyone who seeks it. Somewhere else, Wenji thinks about Aster. Originally, he'd planned to just hand off the thesis and cut him loose if he turned out useless. But now he finds the guy genuinely fascinating. He remembers Aster's nerve, staring down a death threat without flinching, and realizes he genuinely wasn't afraid of dying. That amuses him more than he expected. He puts Aster in a completely different category from everyone else, the ones he privately calls pigs. Wenji feels like he's finally found someone on his level, chasing the same goals, someone who actually wants results. A few days later, it's finally time to head to the academy. The maid tells Aster he'll need to fill out a few simple forms, but that he and Damien are exempt from the admission exams. They're already official students. She mentions the new uniform's going to look great on him, and Aster thanks her before heading out. In the carriage, Damien and Lady Bianca are already waiting. Damien calls out to Aster, all excited, telling him to hurry up. Before they leave, Lady Bianca walks up to Aster and tells him to take care of himself, saying she hopes he manages to reach whatever it is he truly wants. Reminds him this is a huge opportunity. Aster smiles at her and thanks her, quietly repeating her words in his head, what he really wants. Decides he's absolutely going to get it. Thinking about Zenian Academy, the greatest academy on the Eastern continent, he plans to win over every sponsor he can, a confident smile on his face. In the carriage, on the road, his new destination waits ahead, and the anticipation builds. During the ride, Aster gets absorbed in the books Wenji handed him. It only takes a few pages for him to realize just how extraordinary a magical researcher Wenji really is. Based on what he reads, he understands that the basic principles of magic are actually pretty simple, but their interpretations can branch out endlessly. He uses water as an example. To some, it symbolizes life. To others, destruction. It all comes down to perspective. Aster realizes then that every great family developed its own form of magic, built from a unique take on the exact same fundamentals. By the time he finishes the magical text he'd been carrying, he lands on an important conclusion. The curriculum Wenji put together is directly tied to the Declan family's celestial principles. But his thoughts get cut off by Damien, who calls him his friend and tells him to look out the window. Bursting with excitement, he announces they've finally arrived. Aster lifts his gaze and sees it, standing tall in front of him, the massive building of Zenian Academy. The maid escorting them says the carriage can only go this far. According to the teachings of the founder known as the Sage, during the admission period, whether you're noble or not, you're required to walk in on foot. So this is where they part ways. She hopes he learns a great deal at Zenian Academy, wishing them luck and wisdom. Once the carriage pulls away, the two of them start walking. Damien grabs onto Aster's arm and asks him to hurry, mentioning, worried, that Lancey said they might be late and end up without seats. Aster thinks that's ridiculous. After all, an opening ceremony isn't some village theater where seating depends on who shows up first. But he quickly figures Lancey probably only said that to keep Damien from dawdling along the way. Decides not to think much of it. When they finally step into the grand hall, they find the place already half full. Damien's shocked by how many students there are, and comments that Lancey was right. If they'd taken any longer, there really wouldn't have been any seats left. Still, Aster keeps his doubts and checks a slip of paper with their assigned numbers. Class M3, seats 11 and 12. Even so, Damien points at a few open spots and wants to sit down right away. Aster asks him to wait a bit, wondering to himself how this same kid, who didn't even want to come to the academy in the first place, could suddenly be this excited. But before they can settle in, Damien accidentally bumps into a long-haired student who looks visibly annoyed. The tall, arrogant-looking kid demands, furious, to know what's wrong with him. Aster rushes over to Damien, helps him up, and asks if he's okay. Damien, still on the ground, says he's not hurt, and immediately apologizes to the student, saying he wasn't watching where he was going. Just as the two of them are about to walk off, the arrogant kid stops them cold, spinning around furiously, demanding to know what just landed on his clothes. Aster looks and figures out it's saliva, from his buddy Damien. Watching the guy calmly, Aster already knows exactly how this plays out. Damien's going to take the initiative to apologize and try to fix it himself. And sure enough, Damien starts apologizing, trying to wipe the guy's clothes clean. Only problem is, the more he wipes, the messier it gets, and of course, that only makes things worse, leaving the kid even more furious. That's when Aster realizes a fight's inevitable. Barely holding back his rage, the kid throws a punch at Damien, telling him to get out of the way. But before he can follow through, Aster steps in, grabbing his fist tight, and tells him he's making a mistake, suggests he stop right there. The noble student asks, with total contempt, who exactly he thinks he is. Aster answers firmly, says he's Damien's friend, and he's not about to just stand there and watch. The arrogant kid mocks him, saying he sounds like a real loyal friend, but that he's about to regret this dumb decision real soon. Aster just sighs, realizing his plan to make friends on day one has already gone straight down the drain. Snapping his fingers, he decides to drop the idea entirely. At this point, it's obvious his opponent would rather settle this with fists than words. All the commotion pulls in a crowd of curious onlookers, gathering around to watch the fight unfold. Some recognize the gray-haired kid as a member of House Dolenpay, and word spreads fast. Most people bet the Dolenpay student would come out on top. But then, one of the students, someone who seems to carry some authority, cuts through the crowd right away, scolding the others for just standing around watching. One of them asks if he shouldn't be the one stopping the fight, but the guy shuts that down instantly, ordering everyone to clear space, saying that's the only way to have a real fight. He tells the Dolenpay mage to put up his magic barrier around the area. And just like that, this small scuffle turns into a full-blown spectacle, with bets flying left and right. Exter introduces himself as the second son of the proud House Dolenpay, and demands to know Aster's name. Aster answers calmly that, unlike Exter, he doesn't come from some great bloodline, just a passerby, really. Hearing that, the arrogant kid grins right away, says Aster's background doesn't matter, but fighting in a space this cramped definitely puts a mage at a disadvantage. Playing generous, he says he'll let our hero take the first swing. Aster finds the whole thing completely ridiculous, and shoots back that for someone who claims to hate talking, this kid's got a pretty sharp tongue, and asks if he's maybe just scared. That comment sets Exter off for good, and he lunges in fast, throwing a powerful punch. Aster meanwhile keeps the smile plastered on his face, and says there's one more thing, leaving the kid even more rattled. As he closes in, he says he's not just a mage, and with a powerful punch, he nails him right in the face, sending him flying. Watching that punch coming, that bushy-haired brat Exter Dolenpay was dead certain no mage student could ever rock him with a simple punch. But he got completely blindsided the second he felt the weight of Aster's blow, and the impact sent him staggering, wondering where the hell that kind of strength was even coming from. He called Aster a bastard for the power he was throwing around, and while he was still trying to process what had just happened, he got caught off guard again, this time by a healing spell landing right on him. He glanced over and realized it was Damien who was healing him, and that just confused him even more. He could not wrap his head around why his opponent's own buddy would be helping him out. But Aster just gave a faint smile and said noble families really were on another level. Taking advantage of Aster being distracted, Exter landed another clean hit, scolding him for not paying attention. Aster found himself stuck in this absurd situation, one guy attacking while the other kept healing him, and both of them acting like that was somehow completely normal. With Damien tossing out heal after heal, Aster felt his heart start pounding, calling the two of them lunatics. At one point, he genuinely just wanted to pass out right there and put an end to this nightmare. For the first time in his life, he actually wondered if he was scared. The crowd around them started chanting Exter's name, demanding he fight back already, calling him the pride of the Dolenpay family, the star of the Eastern continent, the hope of every martial artist out there. They begged him to finish it off right then, to show everyone the power of his bloodline. Completely fired up by the taunting, Exter exploded with rage and screamed, absolutely furious that some random mage would dare look at him like that, with contempt. He threw a wild punch at Aster, but it sailed through empty air since Aster had already dodged with ease. Then Aster gathered all his strength and unleashed a devastating strike, the kind that came with its own explosion. Seeing that, the crowd went wild instantly, declaring that this right here was the real Exter Dolenpay. But right after he threw that punch, Exter felt the impact land on something, and a second later he was stunned by how light the contact actually felt. Completely confused, he looked up and saw Aster get launched into the air, only to land back down without a scratch. Aster rolled on the ground, got back up right after, and calmly brushed the dust off his clothes. Totally stunned, Exter asked himself how any of this was even possible, and just started screaming in pure fear, not understanding what the hell was going on. He charged straight at Aster, ready to attack, but Aster glanced to the side and saw Damien grinning like an idiot, and figured that since Damien kept healing this guy, he needed to end it in one clean hit. He started running through what he could use to finish this, and then it hit him. He thought this could actually work. If he channeled the power into his hand, this was a technique he developed with his companions back in his past life. It relied on colliding magical particles together to extract raw energy. It did not use mana, but it was not magic either, and it was not a martial art. With the bushy-haired brat already right in front of him, ready to strike, Aster figured this hit was a pure application of magical property manipulation, what he called the collision style. Inside that massive punch that blocked Aster's strike, the impact was so brutal that the barrier around them started cracking apart, and the students nearby began getting hurt by the fallout. When they finally opened their eyes, they asked what the hell that was, seeing the two of them frozen mid-stance, completely locked in combat but not moving an inch. To everyone's shock, it was Exter who dropped to his knees, then face planted straight into the ground, while our boy stayed standing, barely a scratch on him. In that instant, the crowd froze in shock and went dead silent, staring at the outcome of that fight. To celebrate his win, our boy raised a hand and told everyone to clap, cheer, and go wild, because he was the winner. Seeing just how insane Aster was, the students said he was incredible, wondering if he was even really a mage, and what kind of fighting style that was supposed to be. At that moment, Damien called out for his friend and ran over to Aster, asking if they'd won. Aster said yeah, they won, and he was caught off guard watching his buddy act like a little kid about it. But back in the crowd, watching the whole fight, the bushy-haired brat was asking how a mage student could fight like that. That was seriously messed up. To the students' surprise, an adult pushed his way toward them, ordering everyone to clear out of the way, and demanded to know who started a brawl on the very first day of the entrance ceremony. He went down the line asking each of them, who did this? Aster realized he'd caused a pretty massive headache, but honestly, he was chill about it. He was a mercenary after all, and he had plenty of ways to slip out of here. But just as he was about to walk off, his buddy Damien stepped forward and said it was not the others. It was them, the two of them, who started the fight, pointing straight at himself and Aster. The proctor walked over and asked if it was really the two of them. Damien confirmed it. Yeah, they started it, with Exter Dolempe himself lying on the ground, out cold. And just like that, all three of them got hauled off to the headmaster's office. Now in the headmaster's office, Damien and Aster get called in, and both of them confirm it. Yeah, it was them. The professor says that since they came clean, he's letting this slide with no punishment, but the other student can't get beat up like that again either, and he's going to be keeping an eye on the two of them from now on. Aster just says sure, and walking out of that office, he thinks it's a relief the entrance ceremony hasn't even started yet. The two of them head toward the auditorium, starting to look for their seats, while the students around them wonder if that's the same guy who fought like some kind of martial artist despite having a mage's build, and how a mage student could even fight like that with his bare fists. That had been pretty impressive. Right behind Aster, Damien starts waving little goodbyes to everyone, mentioning that a lot of people are staring at them. While Aster thinks great, this is just what he needed. He's basically become a celebrity now. Finally, after walking a bit more, the two of them find their seats. Once he's sitting down, Damien gets really excited, saying it looks like their friend saved them a spot, and that this friend is honestly amazing. Aster, not wanting to ruin his mood, just goes along with it. Yeah, must be that. Up at the auditorium, the headmaster starts speaking, going on about how, following the teachings of the very first headmaster, the academy has to do this and that, and then that, and then this. A speech so long it puts Damien straight to sleep. Meanwhile, Aster is over here thinking the headmaster is honestly impressive, standing there delivering a lecture that long without ever sitting down. Pretty quickly, our boy notices something off. His buddy passed out cold right next to him. He finds it hilarious and kind of adorable, and wipes the drool off Damien's face with his own hand. The next second, he catches something else weird, an assistant whispering to the headmaster, saying something urgent needs his attention right away. While the two of them talk it over, the students just watch. And once things get sorted out, the headmaster tells everyone it's fine, apologizes to the students, but says something urgent came up and he's going to have to cut his speech short. The ceremony, though, is going to keep going. After he waves goodbye, another professor steps up onto the stage, walks over to the mic, and starts yelling for everyone to pay attention, jolting awake every student who'd been sleeping, Damien included. She introduces herself as Professor Zira, and says she's taking over the ceremony in the headmaster's place since he couldn't finish his speech because of some issue. To keep things moving, she starts by introducing the freshmen, first calling up the representative from the magic division, Dahlia Dedini. The girl says, "Got it," standing up from her bench and walking onto the stage. Students start asking if she's really from the Denai family, and whether she actually took the entrance exam. Someone questions whether her skills are even good enough, but another student tells them to think before they run their mouth, since she's the third daughter of the family head. If her skills weren't good enough, why would the Denai family have let her sit the entrance exam in the first place? Watching her up on stage, our boy finds himself genuinely intrigued because he remembers Dahlia. He remembers that if the Declan family is the strongest mage family in the East, the Denai family is the second strongest. Dahlia grew up to become the future face of that eternal second place. Back then, she was already seriously capable, and even by the time he retired, he never got a single bit of help from her. That came down to the fact that the two of them just did not get along. Some people might even call them terrible friends. Still, it's good to see her enrolling this year. The professor calls up the next one, the representative from the martial arts division, a guy named Paul. He responds with a simple, "Got it, right here," and heads up onto the stage, while our boy thinks that since he didn't mention any family name, he's probably not from a noble bloodline. But then again, even that extra kid's family isn't exactly a big deal. So honestly, the noble families here can't be that impressive either. The two students go through the freshman oath, and after a few minutes wrap up that part of the ceremony. Professor Zira announces she's about to introduce the teachers for class 172, and asks them to please step forward. To Aster's surprise, while Dahlia was walking down off the stage, she locked eyes with our boy, catching him off guard, wondering if he'd imagined it or if she was actually looking straight at him. In the end, whatever, he just looks away. That's when Dahlia trips on the stairs and eats it, face first, right into the ground. Our boy immediately stops thinking about her and shifts his full attention to Professor Perun, wanting to know who this guy actually is. Teacher after teacher steps up to introduce themselves, and he's just sitting there wondering when Professor Perun is finally going to show up. At last, after a few more minutes, a new professor climbs the stage, greets the students, and introduces himself as Perun, in charge of the fundamentals of magic studies. Aster thinks he'd been expecting someone more like Wenji, but this guy is nothing alike. Still, Wenji wears the mask of a proper gentleman for everyone else to see, so he shouldn't be quick to judge on looks alone. Once every professor has introduced themselves, Professor Zaira announces that with that, the faculty introductions are done, officially wrapping up the entrance ceremony. Students are told to follow the staff to their assigned dorms. Right next to Aster, Damien is still out cold, and our boy pokes him awake. Damien asks if it's over already, and Aster jokes that no, actually they caught him sleeping and they're expelling the two of them today, so they'll have to head home. That sends Damien straight into panic mode, staring at his friend in horror, and he starts screaming, absolutely losing it, because if his mom finds out, he is so incredibly dead. After a solid while explaining the joke and calming Damien down, our boy finally heads off, making his way to his own dorm. He stops in front of a door, wondering if this is the right one. As soon as he opens it, he spots 2 beds inside and comments that the academy is honestly impressive. Inside a box, he finds the supplies he's apparently supposed to need, given out to every student, and he starts putting everything away along with his clothes. He notices that even the smallest item here somehow displays its stats. Right then, to Aster's surprise, the door swings open, and he gets his first look at his roommate, and unbelievably, it's the exact same guy from the entrance ceremony. He remembers the name, Paul, but he can't help wondering why the guy looks a little irritated. This Paul, coming off just a bit arrogant, simply says neither of them should bother the other, and he doesn't care what Aster does with his time. If he wants to stay up late, that's fine by him, but he'd rather they stay out of each other's business entirely, conversation included. After saying that, he locks eyes with Aster, who just stares back, caught off guard. Paul steps in closer, leaning right into his face, and asks if he got the message, clearly trying to intimidate Aster. The kid asks him why he's not answering. Aster picks up on how bold this guy is, and honestly, everything about him is sparking his curiosity. People had said he was one of the best around, and Aster wants to find out just how good he actually is. So to test that, he lunges at him with a burst of speed, catching the kid completely off guard, making him blurt out what the hell he thinks he's doing. Aster quickly realizes this guy is not bad at all, not even a little. Even the way he drew his sword tells him that much. He's certain that blade doesn't miss its mark. Genuinely not bad. But right then, from out in the hallway, Damien starts yelling for Aster, calling him to hurry up. Our boy flashes a satisfied little smile and asks Paul if that's it. If there's nothing else, he's heading out for a bit. He gives him a pat on the shoulder and tells him to do whatever he wants. But in exchange, Paul shouldn't complain if Aster ends up making noise past midnight. Once he steps out of the dorm, he finds Damien, who greets him with an excited little hey. Damien asks who his roommate even is, and Aster admits he has absolutely no clue. Damien is baffled. What do you mean no clue? You don't even know who he is. Our boy shrugs it off. Of course not. He's way too busy to keep track of who everyone else is. Damien moves on, saying he wants to go check out the academy. Lancey had told him there was a ton to see around here, and that it was mandatory for everyone to see it all on their first day, but that he had to go with a friend. Aster is walking along thinking Zenian Academy is genuinely massive, which is exactly why they tell everyone to get familiar with the layout, so they don't end up lost later. Honestly, worth it. But beyond that, something's been bugging him. Not as much as it used to back in his past life, but his instincts are still on edge, because he can spot Declan agents, or at least the mercenaries working for them, scattered around. He starts counting how many are out there, walking alongside Damien and quietly keeping tally of every mercenary he clocks. After a good stretch of walking, now late in the afternoon, Damien says this lake is awesome, and that there's nothing like it back at his place. Aster is thinking this is exhausting, and that somehow he's turned into a full-time babysitter, probably why Lancey dumped this kid on him in the first place. So he tells Damien to just ask for one to be built at his own house. The kid asks what he even means by that, and Aster explains, you just dig a hole and dump water in it. Boom, instant lake. With his eyes lighting up, Damien says that's true. He's going to ask for an even bigger one at his own place. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Lancey gets hit with a random chill down her spine. Damien asks what Aster thinks he should name his lake, and our boy tells him he can just call it Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Back at the mansion, Lancey shivers again. Then Damien spots something interesting, a statue of some mage nearby, and says he's going to ask for one of those too, also named Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Aster says he's honestly into that idea, and adds that he should get one shaped like a dragon too, with some gorgeous scales. The kid lights up at the idea. Back at the mansion, Lancey gets hit with yet another chill, this one way stronger. Finally, after taking in the view for a while, Aster heads off, saying it's getting pretty late. By his count, he tallied 7 mercenaries over the course of the day. Factoring in the ones he probably missed, there's got to be at least 10 scattered around. Working out how they're spread across the campus, their target is obviously the second magic hall. And that second magic hall happens to be exactly where Professor Perun's lab is located. Just as he'd suspected, their target really is Professor Perun. The Declan family must already know about his alliance with Wenji, and of course they'd start suspecting anyone connected to that name. Tucked away in the shadows, keeping his eyes on his back and the surrounding bushes, Aster spots another mercenary. With a sly little grin, he wonders why they haven't made their move yet. But it's like the second that thought crosses his mind, they finally start acting. So he decides he wants to find out exactly how much he can dig up about their plan. Now at night, right in the middle of campus, one of the mercenaries starts moving fast toward another spot, leaping from tree to tree, then off a lamppost, then tree again, before finally landing near a gymnasium. Inside, another mercenary tells him he was waiting. The one who just showed up asks where everyone else is, and the guy who was already there says they went ahead. The headquarters put out an emergency signal, and everyone's been ordered to regroup at the target's nest. The mercenary asks if that's the primary or secondary target, and the other confirms, secondary. Sounds like they picked up something on the primary target and got their hands on some seriously important intel. Tonight, at midnight, the objective is getting handed off to the secondary target. The mercenary says he gets it, so Wenji, the primary target, has started moving, and if the order came down through the chain, out of all the secondary targets, the one they're supposed to be watching has got to be Professor Perun. But then he gets a little nervous and asks about the single digits. Are they seriously expecting the two of them to take on a monster of a professor like that all alone? At the very least, number 1, or a couple of the single digits, should be coming to deal with him. But the other mercenary tells him no, number 1's not coming, and neither are any of the other single digits. Instead, someone else got assigned to the mission, the fire demon, Callahan. He's the one joining them for this. The mercenary breaks out into a cold sweat. From what he remembers, Callahan is the deputy commander of the Declan Mage Squad, the one they call the Crimson Jewel. Just him alone should honestly be enough, except the guy's a nightmare to work with, ice cold, and he'll do literally anything to get a mission done. Which basically means they're being told to risk their necks on this thing, and now they're stuck doing it alongside that psycho too. The other mercenary points out that this operation can't turn into an open conflict. Having a noble family's mage exposed on a job like this would be a disaster. The first one agrees, yeah, he's got to think about that too, and says they need to move now, because if they don't link up with the group soon, their odds of making it out alive are basically 0. Once the two of them take off to go meet the others, our boy, tucked away in the corner the whole time, listening in on every word, realizes the mission is going down tonight at midnight. And on top of that, they've brought that psycho lunatic Callahan along for the ride. Aster starts thinking back on Callahan. Even back when he was just a mercenary, the guy always seemed like he'd never left his prime. After the Declan family bet their entire survival on the war against the Blandor family, Callahan stayed loyal to a family that was crumbling, proving his devotion the hard way. Even now, he's dangerous, but his real golden age came after the Blandor War, that firestorm the Declans unleashed that nobody could stop. This is the guy who carved his own name into history as a certified war mage, which means Aster has to take him down today. Callahan's magic is one of the Declan family's fire arcane arts, and since he's recognized across the entire continent as a mage, it tracks that he'd be this dangerous. Aster wonders why these mercenaries showed up out of nowhere, but figures he just landed some unexpected intel. Still, one thing's nagging at him: the target they mentioned, Wenji's thesis, is already sitting in his hands. So even if they're saying it's getting handed off tonight to the secondary target, there's no way the thesis he's got is a fake. And since their whole objective can't be anything other than that thesis, that means whatever's getting delivered tonight has to be the fake one. The scene cuts to the dorm room, where that arrogant kid from before is getting ready for something. He lowers his hood and creeps toward Aster's bed, checking to make sure he's asleep and hasn't noticed anything. He stares down at the bed, assuming Aster is out cold. Little does he know that's just a wooden dummy. Now up in the Academy's second tower, in Professor Perun's office, the man just lets out an irritated sigh, thinking those Declans are absolute bastards. He tolerated it back when they crossed the line before, and did nothing about it. But now they're bold enough to invade his own territory, and even he's not sure why they're this confident, or what it's even supposed to mean. But then he says he gets it, and the next second, someone opens the door and stands right in front of Professor Perun. The professor thinks to himself, so this is Paul. The moment he calls him by name, the kid freezes in shock, realizing he's been made. The professor mentions that next time he tries to disguise himself, he should work on refining his astral traits. That's the foundation of any real concealment art. Without bothering to respond, since he thinks the professor's being rude as hell, Paul just hands over the envelope. Perun says, well, if he ever gets another shot at this, he'll do it right. The kid gets uneasy hearing that. After handing over the paper, Perun realizes this has Wenji's fingerprints all over it. He'd planned this whole delivery specifically to slip past the Declan's watch. Still, getting caught this this stupidly? Nah, the professor's sure that's not it. That old fox doesn't go down that easy. He finds himself wondering exactly what kind of trick Wenji is pulling here. Before he can think it through any further, the entire office explodes, catching both of them off guard. The person walking in through the smoke says it's a pleasure to meet them, especially Professor Parun. He introduces himself. The name's Callahan. He wonders out loud if a professor who lives locked away in a lab could possibly know who he is. Meanwhile, Paul's already dropped into a stance, ready to strike. The bushy-haired brat comments that looks like they've got another guest, and he's got to be a mercenary. Judging by the way his hand's resting on his sword, seems like he already knows exactly who this is. Callahan asks the professor if he recognizes him, but to Callahan's absolute fury, Parun just says he's never heard of him in his life, tells him to quit playing around and just spit out what he actually wants, since this piece of garbage is basically shoving himself in their faces. After hearing that, Callahan loses it. This lunatic starts cackling, saying this is way too much fun, nobody's ever talked to him like that before. But fine, he'll cut to the chase. He points straight at Paul and says he's going to die. Then he turns to the professor and asks whether he'd rather lose an arm or an eye. Before he can land the hit on Paul, the professor steps forward, activates his magic, and shields the kid. But Callahan's power is monstrous, and it obliterates the entire office. With flames engulfing everything, Paul opens his eyes, stunned by the scene in front of him. The professor had just thrown himself in the way to protect him. Parun tells Paul that from this point forward, he's not treating him like a student anymore. He's treating him like a mercenary, so he needs to protect his own life. Paul says, understood, he'll do exactly that. Meanwhile, Parun is thinking that since no alarm ever went off, there's a real chance the Declans use concealment magic so no one would notice this whole thing happening. And right now, the only person he can actually trust is a rookie mercenary who's still way too weak. On the other side, Callahan mentions that this envelope looks exactly like the ones the Blanders use, and it also looks like the professor's not planning on handing it over to the elite bow. So he wonders what he should actually do about it. Maybe mess with the two of them for a bit. Right then, a magic circle lights up beneath his feet, radiating a monstrous aura. Parun notices that outside the office, a swarm of mercenaries are closing in to attack. Callahan becomes wrapped in flames, looking like an absolute maniac, and charges straight at the two of them. Paul starts fending off the mercenaries, while Parun activates his ice magic, going head-to-head with Callahan. That overwhelming power from the professor tears what's left of the office apart even more. Across the way, near the dorms, it's our boy who spots that massive explosion, watching it all unfold from a distance. From what he can tell, things have gotten seriously out of hand. He grabs his mask to cover his face, thinking it's been a while since he last needed this. In that moment, he's not Aster anymore. He's the mercenary known as Single Digit 1. Aster says it's finally time. He crosses his hands and starts praying, "Moon, please grant me permission to become a good mercenary again," thinking to himself that it's kind of funny, like he's actually some good guy underneath it all, if he's being honest. Right after that, he leaps off the building, charging straight into that massive chaos below. Back in the professor's office, that psycho is just cackling, saying not bad at all for a mercenary, gripping his own arm like it's holding up just fine, while the other guy stands there panting, stunned by that insane amount of power, realizing he's in deep trouble. He can't believe the talisman he'd been handed turned out to be an actual protective artifact. That was seriously lucky. Right behind him, Professor Parun tells him to get out of the way, already summoning a massive surge of ice and water to counter this guy's fire. He says Paul didn't do half bad, and that he can trust him a little more now. Paul notices the professor's sword has some kind of etheric enchantment on it, and wonders if that's some form of ether magic. Parun asks if he can keep blocking the incoming attacks, and Paul says as much as it takes, since there's no backing out now. If he can't hold the line, he's dead. The guy standing across from them says a mage and a warrior teaming up. Now that's a genuinely solid pair, but he wants to see exactly how much they can take. He's already attacking with his blade, while Parun blocks with his ice magic. Parun keeps cutting down every mercenary that comes at him, thinking that if this keeps going, they're all going to end up getting dragged into this mess, meaning he's going to have to pull out his trump card, especially against that lunatic. When the amount of mana available in nature is limited, and two commanding entities try to control it at once, a struggle for dominance kicks off between them. The mercenaries ask him how much longer he can hold out, and the bushy-haired one, watching this whole thing play out, gets it. He's asking for a power struggle. Fine then, they'll give him one. With a smug little grin, he cranks his power up even further, going head-to-head with Professor Parun's strength. That massive clash between the two powers blows the office apart all over again, and Paul gets sent flying, slipping in and out of consciousness, thinking this whole situation is a complete disaster. These two are absolute monsters, and there's no opening anywhere for him to slip through. If it was going to be like this, they should have just fought each other from the start. The other mercenaries, watching from a distance, freeze up in shock at that massive tornado of power. They say it's terrifying, and their leader tells everyone to hold off. Attacking now would be suicide. They need to just sit tight and wait it out. He turns around asking how many mercenaries they've got left. But right then, to everyone's shock, they get hit out of nowhere. One of them screams that it's an ambush and that they need to fall back. But while the group is scattered, someone charges straight into the center of the battle, catching everyone off guard, and our boy plants himself right between the two of them. Both of them notice him immediately, wondering who the hell this guy is. Callahan tells them to get ready for one seriously bold entrance, and the two of them ask who this maniac even thinks he is. The bushy-haired one, pissed off, asks if he's joking and orders him to attack the guy already. But to Callahan's shock, our boy lunges straight for his throat, telling him this spot right here is going to be his grave. That completely throws Callahan, wondering who this guy even is to claim he's about to die. Trying to save himself in time, he activates a magic circle, attempting to blast Aster apart. Stumbling back a few steps, he's left panting hard, feeling something like a mana disruption ripping through his own body. Our boy, obviously still very much alive, keeps closing in on Callahan who, coughing up blood, admits he can't land a hit on him. That's when other mercenaries rush in to shield Callahan, who grabs a potion, thinking he needs to deal with this mana disruption fast. On top of that, he wants to know exactly where this bastard even came from. But watching him closely, he notices something off. Aster is tearing through every other mercenary like they're nothing at all. Staring at the scene, Callahan thinks this is insane. There's not a single wasted motion in any of his movements. Pure efficiency, instant, flawless casting. But then he catches himself, realizing he's been way too caught up watching Aster fight, wondering if he's actually impressed by this guy. Growing furious, he says he doesn't know who this guy is, but he has to die. He activates a whole cluster of fire magic circles, hurling that entire wave of power straight at Aster, an attack so massive it ends up blowing his own allies away right alongside him. And Aster thinks, yeah, that's exactly the look he was hoping for. And this guy has to die. After he finished his attack, the others ask if he hit his target. A few mercenaries got caught in the blast too, but who cares? He really could not care less. What matters is that the mission got done, and that masked man for sure needs to be eliminated, since he is way too dangerous. He grabs another potion thinking that being this unstable does not suit him, and figures he needs to regroup the other mercenaries to take down Professor Perun. But right as he's downing another potion, he hears a voice ask if that was really all he had. Our boy starts talking, saying that on the outside this guy might look like a lunatic, but deep down he's as cold and calculating as a snake. He'd known from the start that Callahan was going to blow up his own allies right along with him. But here's the thing he should have kept in mind, that coldness of his is exactly what's about to get him killed. Suddenly appearing in the sky, right above Callahan, with a magic circle forming on his finger, our boy fires off a magic missile. The last thing that crosses Callahan's mind is that this was way too fast. That power tears straight through his skull, close enough to slice through his own hair on the way. With a hole punched clean through his forehead, he finally drops to the ground, dead. Aster walks over to him, thinking that, exactly as expected from Callahan, any other mage would have died in that ambush, no question. But he still managed to counter. That war mage's reflexes and judgment were just as sharp as ever, right to the end. But it was actually that last spell of his that ended up working in Aster's favor, because if Callahan had regrouped with the other mercenaries and turned this into a war of attrition, Aster would have lost, given how low his mana pool still is. He stares down at Callahan's bag, thinking, yeah, he already knew this. Most war mages don't trust anyone, so they carry their own grimoires on them at all times. And of course that spatial bag has some kind of recognition magic on it, but he cracks the protection open pretty quick. Now he's got something else to worry about. He turns around, commenting that Professor Parun is running late, and that's exactly when Parun comes walking toward him, saying he'd been busy dealing with rats, right after freezing every last one of them in ice. Parun looks at him, dead serious, and says, more importantly, he wants to know if Aster is one of those rats too. Aster says he just finished fighting that lunatic, and asks how the professor plans to handle this now. What does he think it even means that he just took down one of the Declan's allies? But Parun doesn't answer that directly. He just mentions that since Aster called Callahan a lunatic, it sounds like Wenji is the one who sent him, but that Aster doesn't need to worry about that part. Our boy wonders if Wenji is really someone the professor trusts that much. He asks, who was that other mercenary with him? And did Wenji split the research into two parts? That leaves our boy a little lost. Wait, what do you mean split into two? That thesis was probably fake, and Wenji must have planned this whole thing, using it as bait to lure the rats out. He was probably also trying to tighten up security around Hazen City and the Academy, while cutting off the Declan family's influence in the area once and for all. But Aster keeps chewing on this, because even though the mercenaries used concealment magic, that fight had still been seriously intense. And even accounting for a delayed report, it doesn't add up that the Imperial Knights still haven't shown up. The Declan family must have bribed someone. Then Parun asks if he has the real research on him. Aster confirms, yeah, this is the thesis. Parun starts analyzing it, and asks if Aster knows what's actually in it. Aster says of course he does. Parun says he understands. Even so, our boy says he wouldn't mind fighting again, but Parun asks if he's really sure about that. He wouldn't want to lose a solid ally. Parun agrees, he got the papers safely, and he wouldn't want to lose an ally either, so let's just call it here. But he says he'd like something in return. He mentions that Aster clearly trusts only one type of person, someone with clear-cut goals that line up with his own, and since he's earned Aster's trust, he ought to give something back for it. Our boy suggests it could be a book. Parun's confused. Wait, a book? Aster explains he's planning to build a tower, huge and majestic, and inside it he's going to stock a ton of books available to anyone who wants them. He'd love it if one of them was written by Parun himself, sharing his perspective on the arcane sciences. Parun sighs and says fine, not that everyone would be able to actually understand it, but writing a book isn't a bad idea. Kind of sounds fun, honestly. Our boy says well, he's heading out now. Parun tells him to hold up, asking how they're supposed to stay in touch. He might need to hand off another paper at some point. Our boy thinks it over for a second and pulls out something from his storage that looks like a pearl necklace, telling him to use it. It's a communication crystal. Both halves are linked together. Just break one of the spheres to reach him, or break more than one if things get serious. That way Parun won't have to waste time hunting him down. Parun tells him to wait again, saying he doesn't even know his name. But when he looks up, our boy is already gone. The professor just sits there wondering why he suddenly feels like absolute garbage. A little while later, the Imperial Knights finally show up on scene, quickly sealing off the area and temporarily evacuating the students from the academy, just in case of any follow-up attack. And of course, Aster uses the chaos to slip right back in with everyone else. Damien asks his buddy where he disappeared to, and Aster says he just got back, went to check on something real quick. Thinking about Callahan's body, along with the other mercenaries lying around, he figures that's pretty solid evidence, and the Declan family is going to have to lie low for a good while now. But beyond that, he's stuck wondering why his seal reacted during the fight. Usually it doesn't respond to anything at all. When he blocked Callahan's magic, he felt some kind of power resonate through the barrier, and that's what helped him hold off the counterattack. So he's not going to complain about it. It wasn't like the barrier itself got stronger. It was more like a rejection phenomenon, a basic technique mages use pretty often, one that stops the caster from getting hurt by their own magic. Still, he's genuinely confused trying to piece together what happened, unable to figure out why the seal only activated in that exact moment, or what it even takes to trigger it in the first place. Either way, he's going to need to look into this. Glancing to the side, he spots the largest library in the east, Lopater, sitting right there inside the academy grounds. He'll probably find something worth digging into over there. But right then, someone behind him won't stop calling out, asking if he's Aster, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. Introduces himself, Chenbi. Our boy asks what he wants, and the kid says he fought really well. Our boy, confused, wonders if this guy came here to fight him too, and if he already knows his secret identity, that could turn into a serious mess. He even finds himself wondering if he should silence him, meaning kill him. But then the kid, super hyped, says the fight Aster had against that martial arts division guy during the entrance ceremony was seriously impressive. He asks how he managed to fight like that, while Aster realizes that instead of leaving a bad impression, he actually walked away with a solid reputation, even though the kid says his own name without a shred of respect. Aster just says, well, the guy he fought that day barely had any ether, but that's going to change over time. Chenbi says he gets it, but then an awkward silence settles between the three of them. The kid keeps trailing after Aster and asks if he could maybe stick with him. He hasn't made a single friend yet, and it'd be kind of weird to keep going solo without teaming up with anyone. You know what he means. Aster thinks, yeah, sort of. The academy promises equal treatment for everyone, no matter where you come from, but that's a promise from the academy, not from the students themselves. For someone like Chenbi, coming from a poor family, it's pretty normal to have to deal with some prejudice. Not that Aster particularly cares either way. Our boy just says he wasn't expecting much from him. Chenbi says thank God. Honestly, he'd been really nervous, and when something like what happened yesterday gets around, being alone starts to feel kind of awkward. Our boy says he thinks he gets it, so the two of them start talking normally. Aster thinks, yeah, this is what a normal conversation is supposed to feel like. And in this life, so far, he's only run into lunatics. Professor Parun, Wenji, that butler, and Damien himself. He'd honestly forgotten what regular people were even like. Now it's finally time to start his life at the academy. The most normal life possible. The next morning, everyone's gathered in the auditorium. Damien's just yawning away, saying he's still super sleepy. Our boy keeps reading through his books, when Chenbi shows up right beside him, saying good morning to both Aster and Damien. He comments he still can't believe they have to come to class after all that chaos yesterday. Aster agrees, yeah, that's rough. Meanwhile, he's thinking that this Chenbi, judging by yesterday's conversation, doesn't come from a noble family or have much money, but somehow he's not shy about it in the slightest. Honestly, the guy's pretty upbeat. Seems like a genuinely decent person. Chenbi asks Aster if he knew their professor is going to be Miss Zara. Aster asks, who's Zara? Leaving Chenbi baffled. Wait, he doesn't know who she is? She's the one who single-handedly wiped out an entire troll horde. Our boy looks up and recognizes that same girl. She's the professor who was up on stage during the entrance ceremony. She steps up to the podium and tells everyone it's a pleasure to meet them, introducing herself as Zara, and mentions they had a small incident yesterday, but it's nothing they need to worry about. They should just focus on their studies. Before the first class, they're going to measure everyone's mana. This measurement evaluates both the quantity and the quality of each student's mana. She asks the class which of the two they think matters more. A girl quickly raises her hand, and Zara asks her name. She says Arjun, and Zara tells her to go ahead and answer. A little nervous, the girl says she doesn't have a concrete answer, but if someone already has a certain amount of mana, she'd say quality matters more. The professor asks why, and she explains that with a mage as powerful as she just described, whoever has the higher quality mana would naturally come out ahead. The professor thinks that's actually a solid answer. Mana quality affects precision, stability, and raw power, and even if you've got tons of mana, it's useless if you can't land the hit. But even so, that's still not the 100% correct answer. The professor visibly sours at that, catching the girl completely off guard with that reaction. Zira asks which family Miss Arjun belongs to, and she says the Palaim barony. Zira, with a hint of arrogance, comments that of course it would be, leaving the girl practically on the verge of tears. She asks if anyone else has an answer, and notices no one else wants to speak up, so she just points at some random guy, asking his name. He says Philo, and answers that he thinks quantity might matter more, since in large-scale attacks, having more mana would be far more useful. Aster thinks, yeah, that's fair. From a different angle, quantity really can outweigh quality. At the end of the day, it depends on the situation, and both can matter equally. But the professor gets even more irritated at that answer, glaring at him with actual hostility, and asks his family. He says he doesn't have one. She moves on to the next student, and one by one they all answer, some say speed, others casting, other things entirely. But she keeps getting more and more irritated, always asking about family, running through the exact same routine with every single one. Our boy thinks, what kind of person is this? Is this whole thing secretly some kind of interrogation? Zara says she heard everyone out, and honestly, every single answer had gotten close to the truth. Except the truth is there was never a correct answer to begin with. Which means she was never actually looking for the right answer. She wanted them to think harder. What kind of answer would they actually give? And was it something they genuinely believed? Or were they just trying to guess what she wanted to hear? A mage should never lose their conviction, no matter where or when. They shouldn't act based on how others are judging them, and they need the strength to hold their will firm until the very end. She looks out over all the students and asks if they'd call that the mindset of a true mage. From this point on, every one of them needs to become a real mage. That's the message she wants to leave them with, and they should hold on to it in their hearts. That catches all the students off guard, while our boy thinks, yeah, that was actually great, so in the end he'd been right. Still, this is a pretty insane way to teach someone. Zira says now they're going one by one to get their mana measured. First up, she calls Miss Arjun, catching the girl completely off guard since she'd almost been in tears earlier. Zira announces she'll be the representative for class M3 of the Magic Division, since her answer earlier was genuinely impressive, and she'll be logging her classmates' mana levels. The girl, thrilled, just thanks her. Aster thinks, so that's how she trains people. Beside him, Chenbi mutters something about being jealous of that girl. Zira calls her assistant forward, telling him to step up, and he pulls the cloth off an object, revealing something like a magic crystal covered in engraved sigils. Zira explains that most of them have probably never seen anything like this before, so it's time they find out their own mana level. Who knows, there might even be a monster hiding among them. Zira says it's fine, and that using the crystal is simple. She tells Miss Arjun to place her hand on the crystal orb and circulate her mana through it. The girl says got it, placing her hand on the orb, and as soon as she does, she notices the reaction. The orb starts calculating her mana. The number 4 pops up on the projector. The professor explains they should all be able to see it clearly. Among the various indicators, the main one is the reading in the center that represents the refinement index, in other words, mana quality, which can range from 1 to 10. Miss Arjun sits at level 4, and considering last year's freshman averaged level 3, that's pretty impressive. The girl turns red, thrilled by the praise, and thanks the professor. Zira says now they're moving on to mana quantity, and it's just as simple. All she has to do is inject her mana into it. As soon as she does, the crystal orb starts glowing. The professor explains the quantity scale runs from 0 to 100, and Miss Arjun's number is 17. Considering last year's average was 15, that's a bit above average too. Judging by both her quality and quantity, the professor can tell she's been putting in real work and congratulates her, leaving the girl stunned by the compliment. Beside Aster, Chenbi says he's hoping his own numbers turn out high too. Meanwhile, Aster, watching that girl, thinks he can already picture her future. She's headed straight for honor roll. After a while, the professor says she's got other matters to handle, so she's stepping out. But they should keep going with the measurements under the assistant professor's guidance. So one by one, everyone starts testing. Chenbi stands up and asks Aster why they're not going yet. Aster gets up too, but notices Damien's fast asleep. Right then, they hear a commotion. A huge reaction breaks out down below, since someone just pulled a refinement index of 6 and a mana quantity of 20. Genuinely incredible numbers. The assistant professor asks the kid's name, and he answers, Furion de Denai. Aster realizes he's from the same family as Dahlia, the Denai family, and judging by the slightly different hair color, he's probably from a collateral branch. He can tell from the way the guy introduces himself, by first name only, then adds the full surname after. The assistant comments that considering he's from a noble family, the results are excellent, though his mana capacity leaves a little to be desired compared to his refinement. Still, it's an impressive score overall. The kid, looking pretty pleased with himself, just says thanks. Meanwhile, Damien finally wakes up, stretching, asking what all the noise is about. Aster explains they're measuring everyone's mana. Damien asks why, and our boy admits he's not totally sure either, but it can't hurt to get his measured too, since it's part of the class anyway. Damien gets super excited, asking if he's serious, saying he wants to try it too. Our hero thinks, great, Damien's about to make him seriously embarrassed. The three of them head down, and a bunch of people start noticing that kid is the young heir of the Blandor family, and he looks way too young to be here already. And the guy right beside him is Aster, the one who beat up that other student on day one. Aster feels a little uncomfortable with that, thinking, this is such a pain, he really didn't want to be known as the guy who punched someone on his very first day. He'd just gotten a little too fired up in the moment. The assistant professor steps forward and asks Damien if he's really the young heir of the Blandor family, and why doesn't he come try it out. Damien asks Aster if it's just regulating your mana. Aster confirms, yeah. Basically, Damien puts his hand on the crystal, and a massive reaction erupts, stunning everyone. Aster wonders how any of this is even possible, while the kid from the Deni family stands there in complete shock, watching, realizing he's staring at a monster. Damien's mana quality reads 9, and his quantity reads 67. That triggers a full-blown uproar, everyone asking what's going on, wondering if it's some kind of error. Our hero watches the assistant's reaction, and realizes, so this is how normal people react to a genius, a wall so far beyond what they can even imagine. He'd already known Damien was a genius, but he had no idea it was this absurd. Damien, adorably clueless as always, asks if that's considered high. Our boy thinks now he finally understands why that Blandor monster was so strong. He was just born like this. If the Damien from his past life had actually put in the effort, the entire continent would have changed. But this time it's going to be different, because the Blandors are going to be a permanent thorn in the Declan's side forever, and he's personally going to push Damien past every ordinary limit there is. The assistant, visibly nervous, tells Damien he's more than worthy of the Blandor name, and he's genuinely impressive, but he can't let it go to his head. A mage's true ability isn't decided by mana alone. Damien, all excited, says okay, and runs straight over to Aster, asking if his has been measured yet. Aster says not yet. He starts glancing around, checking out the others, and realizes everyone's probably dying of curiosity to see how he stacks up next to Damien. After all, he's not from a noble family, and yet he's constantly hanging around the Blandor heir, and he even took down the Dolanpe family's second son. So they'll all want to see what he's capable of, but he needs to play it low-key. A middle-of-the-road score is the safest bet. Way less trouble that way. The assistant asks his name, and our boy answers, Aster. He puts his hand on the crystal, thinking he'll just dial his mana property in a bit, use a decent amount, nothing crazy. But the second he does it, he notices something off, wondering why the limiter is set so low. He thinks, oh no, this is bad. This is going to come out way bigger than he expected. The number 10 pops up, and his mana quantity starts climbing 10 times faster than it should, until the index flashes red, throwing an error. The crystal reports an error. Limit exceeded, please reset the device. All the students freeze in shock, wondering what in the world is going on. Damien, on the other hand, is thrilled for his friend, saying he's amazing. But Aster says it looks like it's not working right, they should measure again. The assistant agrees, yeah, seems like it. Damien, though, insists, no, that's exactly right. Our boy tells him to shut up, real quiet under his breath. Damien repeats it again, no, that's definitely correct. The assistant says, well then, he can go again, since it's already been reset. A new result comes up, refinement level 3, mana level 15. Everyone says, yeah, that checks out. The earlier reading must have just been a glitch. Aster just sighs, thinking he needs to be a bit more careful from now on. Right behind him, Damien mutters that he doesn't like this crap one bit, catching our hero off guard, who turns around asking where he learned that word. Damien, a little annoyed, explains that Aster himself said, whenever something's a lie, you call it crap, so all of that back there was crap. Aster just plays it off, thinking he can't just say whatever he wants anymore, or he's going to end up teaching this kid all his bad habits. By the end of the day in Professor Zira's office, she's staring out the window, thinking about the battle that went down, the Declan family and that mage Callahan attacking Professor Perun. Well, Perun was pretty famous back in the day, and he'll figure it out on his own. Not really her business. Right then, the assistant walks through the door, saying the tests are done, and hands over the results. The professor starts reviewing them, noting this semester's numbers are pretty average overall. Furion Dedeni's results are a bit disappointing. Damien Blandor, on the other hand, scored appropriately for the greatest talent in his family's history, and definitely needs personalized mentoring. But then she spots something odd, staring at Aster's file, noticing there'd been an error during his measurement, forcing him to retake the test. The error error code read limit exceeded. She sits there wondering, who exactly is this Aster kid, and what is he actually capable of? Damien, still a little irritated, asks his friend if he thinks this looks good, showing off the illusion of a dragon. Aster confirms, yeah, that's good. Damien celebrates, saying that one's going to be blood, sweat, and tears number 2. Aster tells him to hold on, they can make it a bit more dynamic. He should spread the wings out and make it look like it's about to lunge forward with its mouth wide open. Damien agrees it does look cooler with the mouth open. Beside them, Chenbi finds himself wondering how they changed things this effortlessly. Even the Great Furian could only manage manipulating a single spirit body, but these two are just messing around with mana like it's nothing at all. This world is honestly way bigger than he thought, and next to them he feels like actual dog crap. Aster thinks, yeah, he gets how Chenbi feels, but what can he really do about it? All he can do is accept reality and keep moving forward. Damien calls out to Aster, saying today was really fun, and that he thinks coming to this academy was the right call, catching our boy off guard, who smiles and says it's good to hear that. The next morning, somewhere isolated, our boy examines Callahan's spatial bag, noticing it's locked. But if he understands the principles of magic well enough, and has good enough magical intuition, he can easily crack any mana pattern the owner set on it. If he'd had the right tools, he could have wrapped this up in a week, but since he's stuck hiding out in a private training room, it ended up taking a full month. Even so, he didn't spend all that time on just this. He'd already converted the elixir he got from the Blanders into mana and absorbed it, and picked up a solid chunk of knowledge about the academy along the way too. Anyway, the point is, he can finally crack this thing open. The moment he opens the bag, the first thing he grabs is a stack of potion vials. Next, a cloak, but he figures he can't exactly use that. Then he pulls out something weird looking, some kind of bracelets, and realizes it's a defensive artifact, not bad at all in terms of power. It should be almost time for the real prize to show up. And finally he finds it, the Declan's secret grimoire, the Crimson Flames, a lower tier secret spell, the same flames used by Farin, a brutal piece of magic capable of burning through barriers themselves. Obviously he needs to master it before he can actually turn it against them, and that's not something you learn overnight. He'll get there on his own time. But now that he stops to think about it, today was the semester performance evaluation. After getting back from training, he links up with Chenbi and Damien, standing in a little crowd, commenting there's a ton of people out today. Chenbi agrees and asks if he heard the news. Our boy asks what news. Chenbi explains there are rumors going around that this semester's evaluation is going to be the Canyon Rush. A few days ago, some students from class M1 overheard staff talking about needing to repair the canyon during this busy stretch. Aster says he gets it. This semester performance evaluation Chenbi's talking about has 3 practical tests. The trial corridor, a labyrinth where you have to reach a specific objective. The Canyon Rush, where students race to the finish line. And the simulator, where you duel another person or a monster. Out of all 3, the Canyon Rush is probably the most famous. But whichever event it ends up being, Aster's not too worried. As long as he passes without any issues, that's good enough for him. Chenbi, though, doesn't seem to share that mindset and starts running through all kinds of strategies for tackling the canyon. Right then, everyone goes silent, and a professor walks in front of the group, saying it's good to see them again. It's Professor Parun, the one in charge of class M1 in the magic department, who's going to be overseeing their evaluation. Aster smiles at him, thinking, man, it's been a while, and those eye bags of his have gotten even worse since last time. Parun starts explaining that, as everyone already knows, today is the day of the semester performance evaluation, and the test picked for this round is the trial corridor. That catches Chenbi completely off guard, and he starts shaking, saying no way, his whole plan just went straight down the drain. Damien jokes that he's such a liar, leaving Chenbi absolutely heartbroken. Parun explains the rules. Everyone lines up according to their class. Once the lines are split up, he explains the goal is pretty straightforward. The trial corridor is a labyrinth, and you just have to make your way through until you reach the final gate. No matter which path you take, you'll eventually reach the objective, so there's no reason to stress about it. Chenbi comments that sounds easy, but the professor keeps going, saying if that were really it, this would just turn into a mindless race. So there's something else waiting inside the trial corridor, golems. That freaks the kid out badly, and he blurts out that this is straight up bull, and someone off to the side chimes in saying his mother should have taught him some manners. Parun continues explaining the golems might be slow and kind of clunky in design, but they'll still give them plenty of trouble at their current skill level. Their cores are exposed and their durability's been tuned down, so students should be able to take them out pretty easily. Even so, in a closed off space like that, the golems will catch up to them fast. While the students keep grumbling, Parun thinks these mages seriously lack composure. That one over there showed some guts, pushing himself to the absolute limit, though maybe that was just the environment talking. Still, a handful of students here genuinely have potential. That one's tense, but her willpower's solid. Those two have eyes that burn like they're actually alive. And that one right there, forget it. Not a single thought going on in his head. He says that's enough, and tells everyone to stay alert. He explains the golems will only act as guardians at the intersections, and whether they fight them or dodge them is entirely up to each student. Everyone will also get an evaluation bracelet, and these bracelets carry a defensive power similar to a barrier. If the barrier breaks, the student gets disqualified, and the golems will start ignoring them completely. It's a solid competitive system. Lastly, since everyone seems a little unmotivated, he's going to throw out a suggestion, and he asks them to impress him. He doesn't care if someone's the first to finish, or takes down the most opponents. If someone pulls off something genuinely impressive, he'll hand out a prize just for them, one that won't disappoint. Aster, grinning, wonders what kind of prize wouldn't disappoint him. And honestly, he's starting to like the sound of this. Aster starts thinking back on the largest library in the eastern continent, Lapater. It's split into 3 levels, upper, middle, and lower. Out of those, the only one he's actually allowed into is the lower level. When he visited before hunting for clues about his stigma, he couldn't find a single useful grimoire down there. In the end, to actually find a real lead, he'd need to search the middle floor, or the upper floors. But those floors are only accessible to high nobility from the imperial family, or the most prestigious houses. The only other way in is getting recommendations from at least 3 professors, and that's exactly why he needs that reward from Professor Perun. He'd been trying to keep a low profile, stay right in the middle of the pack, but the people around him don't seem interested in leaving him alone. Either way, he's already got the crossing route memorized, so this semester evaluation should be pretty easy for him. But then Aster notices all the students rushing over to the assistant professor, asking what the golems look like, whether they've got traps rigged inside them, and what their elemental attribute is. The assistant explains their attribute is fire-based. Another noble kid starts yelling that he needs a golem controller, while the assistant snaps back that he's basically trying to steal the thing. Aster, watching from the corner, realizes this is a complete mess. Honestly, hard to tell if these are mages or straight-up street thugs. Glancing over, he spots Damien talking to someone else, asking for grapevine seeds please, 20 of them should do the trick. But the staff member tells him he's not the professor, and asks why grapevine seeds specifically, since Damien's main attribute is something else entirely. Damien explains he doesn't actually have a fixed attribute, but he can still cast plant-based magic, making plants sprout out of thin air. Behind him, that kid from earlier watches, completely stunned, genuinely disappointed in his own weakness by comparison. Aster realizes that even Damien, who spends most of his time just fooling around, is actually putting in real prep work for this evaluation. He finds himself wondering about Chenbi, whether he's finally going to come out of his shell this time. Right then, a voice announces they're about to assign starting points, and everyone needs to check their names and head to their designated area. The 3 of them look up at the screen, and our boy sees where he landed. His starting point is number 3. He wants to know who else is starting there with him. Damien gets pretty excited, saying he can see his friend's name on the list too. Chenbi wishes them both good luck. Our boy thinks that all the starting points are scattered, and the other people at point 3 are 6 people whose names he doesn't even recognize. It reminds him of the old days, back when he used to handle problems like this. Back when missions would throw together groups of people who had nothing in common, always painfully awkward. Someone approaches him asking if he's Aster. Our boy looks over at the kid, who seems pretty full of himself, flanked by 2 friends. Aster wonders what this is even about. This guy clearly isn't from class 3, and honestly, he's never seen anyone this arrogant before. Kind of makes him want to punch the guy just from looking at his face. The kid steps forward, introducing himself as Debi. He says he heard Aster's pretty skilled, and he'd like to make him an offer. Aster tells him to spit it out. The kid says he wants to buy the bracelets off anyone who gets eliminated. 30 gold per piece, including his own group of course. 3 more guys total. If Aster handles all of them, he'll pay 90 gold total. Aster thinks 30 gold coins is roughly a full month's income for an average commoner family. The kid comments it's not a bad deal, even for a gray zone bum like him. He adds that the young master might be looking after him now, but how long is that really going to last? It's about time he learned to fend for himself. Aster doesn't give away a single reaction, realizing that's exactly what this kid wanted. And honestly, he's not even wrong. Some other kid might resent that, call it a coward's move or something like that. But these guys are just making smart use of what they've got. They're filthy rich, so why wouldn't they? Good for them, honestly. Still, Aster couldn't care less about any of it. He asks Dibe why 90. Dibe asks if that's not enough, then fine, 35 gold per bracelet, coming out to 105 gold total. Aster still shakes his head, says the math doesn't add up. Sounds like the young master's going to need to redo his numbers. He says there are 3 more guys standing next to him. Dibe confirms, yeah. Aster points out that including Dibe himself, that's 6 people total. The kid asks, so what? Aster asks why they're leaving their own heads off the price list. If it's 35 per person, that brings the real total to 210 gold. That's the actual correct math. After hearing that, the 3 kids freeze in shock, not expecting a comeback that blunt. Dibe gets seriously pissed, wondering what the hell is wrong with this guy. Is he an idiot? How does some lowly peasant not know his place? Where does he even get off with this kind of confidence? He asks if 35 isn't enough. Fine then, he'll bump it up to 100, and not a cent more. Aster responds that in that case the total would be 240 gold. Dibei asks if he's out of his mind. But then it clicks for him. This lowly bastard is trying to milk him for cash, without even noticing his own greed doing all the talking. Dibei just wanted to see how far this kid would dare push it in front of him, but realizes he's basically wasted his own time here. Irritated, he thinks there's no hunting dog better suited to carrying out the young lady's orders than Aster, except this particular dog is a rabid one. He's going to need another approach. He turns around and says the negotiation's over and that Aster should just pretend he never heard any of this. But Aster asks where exactly he thinks he's going. They can forget the whole bracelet deal, sure, but he's still owed payment for them regardless. Dibby gets furious, asking what that's even supposed to mean. Aster explains it's like hauling cargo on a wagon, charging separate fares for cargo and passengers, then pulling the cargo out without paying. The least he could do is cover the passenger fare. He asks for 120 gold, 40 per person. That's the last straw. The kid standing next to Dibby explodes, calling Aster a piece of trash, saying he's heard plenty from this guy already, but never seen a gray zone thug this shameless in his life. He asks if Aster really thinks he's on the same level as Dibby, and for his information, Dibby's distant ancestor holds the rank of Baron. Dibby calls out to his friend Paco, trying to get him to stop, but the kid, even angrier now, isn't listening, saying he's going to teach this bastard a lesson he'll never forget. Dibby gets even more furious, calling his name again, and when the kid finally turns around, he sees Dibby absolutely seething with rage, telling him not to put him in a position where he loses even more of the reputation he's already lost. Dibby asks Aster if it's really 120 gold. He pulls out a coin pouch, thinking he needs to hold the line. The young lady's orders matter way more than these idiots. If they can lock down a business deal with the young lady, their merchant network could grow several times over. The second Aster takes the money, he comments that he really hadn't realized he was standing in front of someone so distinguished. So given that, he figures the unit price just went up, and since Dibby's clearly this noble, he's doubling the fee, bringing the grand total to 160 gold. The kid agrees, more or less resigned, and pays the full 160 gold to Aster. But he adds that starting now, he's going to show Aster exactly how miserable his life can get over 160 gold. He'd better be ready for it. Later on, everyone's all set to begin the evaluation. The professor goes over the rules one more time. If the shield on the bracelet breaks, the student's eliminated. The barrier activates whenever magic hits the body directly, or from counterattacks and mana blasts. Once the barrier's destroyed, the bracelet stays on, and the wearer gets forcibly teleported out of the test zone, so no one needs to worry about actually getting hurt. Right behind our boy, Debbie keeps glaring at him, still absolutely fuming. The assistant gives Parun the signal, and Parun confirms they're clear to start. The magic circles activate, and everyone gets teleported out to the test site. The assistant announces the transfer's complete, and now they'll pull up the internal feed to start scoring. Parun, watching from a distance, thinks that Dahlia and Damien ended up starting at the same point. But right as he's thinking that, the broadcast starts glitching out. The assistant wonders what's going on, and tells him to check the magic eye again. But Parun, standing behind him, says that's enough. He'd set up a few magic eyes of his own on the side, and asks which starting point this is. The assistant confirms, starting point 3. And that's exactly where the feed is locking onto, showing Dibei absolutely boiling with rage, saying he's about to destroy Aster right now. The second the teleport finishes, our boy and the others land somewhere new. Right away, Aster turns around, letting his dear classmates know he's about to become their worst headache, and since they're all short on time, they might as well get moving. But what Aster hadn't seen coming was those arrogant nobles behind him swinging first. The kid from earlier says Aster's being way too cocky, and he wants to see exactly how long that confidence of his lasts. He and his buddies charge in, while our boy just stands there like a statue, watching the attack come in with total boredom. The second he starts moving, he figures if he actually got hit by one of these spells, he'd be disqualified on the spot and teleported out. So naturally, he just dodges the magic with zero effort, weaving out of every single shot. He knows perfectly well in his head that dodging these idiots is basically free. He charges the whole group, landing a brutal kick straight to the first noble's head. After all, taking a punch or kick doesn't get anyone disqualified. He proceeds to beat every last one of them down, thinking, winning like this feels weirdly satisfying, genuinely a good time. Once he's dropped all of them, he stares down the so-called young master, saying he must be loaded, considering he just managed to take down everyone. But hey, no hard feelings. He still owes 320 gold for that insolence, and from here on out, it's 1 silver per hit. After getting thoroughly wrecked by Aster, the young master screams, furious, that he's going to make him pay for this, and after what he just did, there's no way he walks away clean. Our prota just pictures the guy's face and knocks him down again, thinking 100 hits works out to roughly 10 gold coins. Without Damien around, keeping his own strength in check is a bit of a hassle. He's got to be careful not to flip who's the victim and who's the attacker here. But obviously, the real victim in this scenario is him. Now that he's got their bracelets in hand, he wonders what to do next. He needs 3 recommendations. On top of the one he's getting from Perun, he still needs 2 more, which means hunting down some other professors eventually. He mulls over what could actually impress them. He briefly considers taking out the pillars holding up the trial corridor. There's only 4 of them keeping the whole thing standing, but that would be flat out suicide, and it'd make him an enemy of the entire Eastern continent. Not wanting to dwell on that any further, he just keeps walking, wondering how everyone else is holding up. On the other side of the cavern, with a different group of students, every single kid is in full panic mode, saying if this keeps up, they're all getting disqualified. They're begging that psycho young master to just let them through, and that so-called psycho young master is none other than Damien, completely unhinged, screaming there's no way in hell he's letting them pass. As they run for their lives, they're yelling what the hell is going on. How is he controlling the golems with a grapevine seed of all things? In the middle of the chaos, one of them trips, and when he turns around, he sees a massive golem looming right over him, ready to crush him flat. But it stops dead in front of that scared kid, a friend of theirs, who's just begging. He only wanted to pass this evaluation. That's all. Please, just stop attacking him. On the other side, a couple of students yell that he's a filthy commoner, ordering him to hand over his bracelet quietly. 2 girls talk it over, wondering who's going to grab him, and one asks why it has to be her specifically. The other says fine, she'll just suppress her own mana while she does it. The hiding kid keeps listening to their conversation, thinking this is his window to bolt. Without a second thought, he takes off running like the world's ending. But as he runs, he glances down at his arm and feels a jolt shoot through his bracelet. What the hell is going on? Did he get hit by some spell without even noticing? He figures that's it, he's disqualified now, probably about to get teleported out any second. But then something weird happens. He doesn't get teleported, nothing happens at all. While he's still trying to figure out why, a voice starts talking to him, asking if he can hear it. That voice quickly turns downright chilling, saying he's not one of this academy's regular students. The kid freezes in shock hearing that, realizing it's not the voice of anyone here. The voice keeps going, saying most of them probably have no clue who they're dealing with, but one of them's already figured it out, since he'd know exactly why they're doing this. For whoever's already suspecting their identity has been made, this message is for him specifically. They've got no demands, just that he faces the consequences for pissing off someone powerful. Even Damien, listening in from a distance, admits that gave him chills, showing zero reaction to it whatsoever, which is bizarre for a guy like him. Right after, the voice keeps talking, saying here and now, every student is going to die. There's no way out for any of them. They can all die in complete despair. Back at the faculty office, Professor Perun goes rigid with shock, saying that's enough. He orders his assistant to keep everyone from panicking, and tells him to round up the other professors immediately, especially Professor Felina. She needs to be brought here right now. The second the assistant takes off running, Perun, absolutely seething, smashes his own desk, wondering how these filthy worms dare pull something like this. Back to our boy, he just finished crushing a golem without breaking a sweat, muttering, ugh, these things just won't stop coming, right as another swarm of them shows up dead ahead. With that, the golems keep charging at Aster, and he drops each one with a monstrous punch straight to the core. He pauses for a second, thinking that voice is echoing across the entire test field. Somehow, 10 minutes go by, and the golems that were supposed to be slow and clunky are now fast and agile. On top of that, something else. They know exactly where he is, and they're coming in hard. If these Guardian-type golems are running around on their own initiative like this, that means someone got into the control system, which also means there's way more of them than there should be. They must have released every single golem from storage. He, flashing a confident little smirk, thinks, well, who is he anyway? He's problem solver number 1 himself, the guy who's been through it all, minus aerial combat. With both hands out, channeling magic, he charges the golems, saying whoever's behind this is about to get an earful, or a fistful. The scene cuts to another location where the Protoss friend shows up, thinking if he'd known it would come to this, he should have backed out way earlier. He's shaking, picturing his own death, but no, he's not dead yet, just close to it. While he's making his way through the corridors, he spots someone running toward him and wonders who that could be. Maybe a survivor? He recognizes our boy sprinting straight at him and lights up seeing Aster. But right after he calls out his name, he starts feeling a massive tremor, and behind Aster, not 1 but 2 golems come charging after him. Aster blows right past Chenbi, yelling for him to move, then tells him to run for his life, because otherwise he's dead. The kid takes off like his life depends on it, because it does. Our boy right beside him realizes he felt the mana and came running, but it wasn't Damien. At this rate, Chenbi's going to get caught too. Thinking it over, he decides it's time for plan B, and tells Chenbi to hand over his bracelet. The kid asks what he means. Our boy explains that a golem's detection range isn't nearly big enough for this, so for them to be tracking the 2 of them this precisely, the bracelet must be tied into the control system somehow, basically acting like a bell, ringing straight to the golems. The kid, still stunned, asks what he's planning to do. Our boy says he's already been marked as the target, so drawing the golems onto himself gives Chenbi the best shot at surviving. While he runs, he can buy time until he finds Damien. He tells Chenbi that he's got a family too, and whoever can live, should live. Hearing that, the kid is completely floored, remembering what his own parents used to tell him. Not to worry, just focus on his magic. No matter what anyone says, he should never bow his head to anyone. Overwhelmed, nearly in tears, he says this whole thing sucks. But Aster needs to actually survive. They need to see each other again someday. He hands over the bracelet. The second he turns to go, he thinks, there's no choice here, he has to live. His parents bought him a spell book instead of food. His little sister dropped out of school for his sake. His family, his sisters, they deserve so much more than this. He has to pay them back for everything. But right then he remembers his mom calling him her pride and joy, and he freezes at the memory, wondering if he's actually something to be proud of. Indecisive, timid, honestly nothing special about him at all. Someone who was even willing to ditch his own friend. He asks himself if that's really something to be proud of, and he knows, no, absolutely not. He decides he's not letting one more drop of guilt sit in his heart. No matter how painful it gets, he's never giving up. He puts every bit of his focus into his magic, remembering the spell his master left him, the one that first woke up his talent. He begs, please, please let it work this time. Magic starts forming above his fingers, and he casts it, unleashing an earthen attack, remembering what his master told him, that this spell pierces through anything, majestic as a knight's lance. He crouches down low. Our boy glances back, shocked, wondering what the hell that is. A massive spear of earth erupts, tearing straight into the golems, blowing everything around it apart. Watching that, Aster is genuinely stunned, thinking this spell doesn't just reshape the stone in the corridor, it actually alters its properties entirely. And this is a spell Chenbi shouldn't even be able to hold on to. He looks back and finds Chenbi completely out of breath, collapsing to the ground right after. Our boy watches him, while the kid explains that back then his master told him, he thinks that's the right way to put it. He left him this spell called Earth Lance. Kind of a grand name for it, honestly. Our boy says it's not that grand. Chenbi asks if he's serious. Our boy says, well, actually it is pretty grand, but with a spell like that, the one who proves its worth is the one who casts it, and whether it's grand or not comes down to whoever's bold enough to use it. Chenbi grins, calling out to Aster, while our boy grumbles that he feels like he's dying too, downing a healing potion, forcing it down his own throat, but says something this small isn't going to kill him. Once Chenbi gets back on his feet, Aster wonders what to do with him now. He can't drag him along, and he can't just leave him here either. He thinks it over, scanning the surroundings, hunting for tracks, feeling out the flow of mana around him. He tells Chenbi to head straight that way. At that fork up ahead, stay right, and he'll reach the other students. Chenbi asks what Aster's going to do. Our boy thinks the mana flow heading toward the control room feels really off, oddly familiar, actually, but not the Declan's usual method. He tells Chenbi, dead serious, that he's got something he needs to handle. He's not totally sure what it is yet, but he's got a really bad feeling about it. Right after that, our boy takes off running through the corridors, trying to place where he's felt this sensation before. It's not the Declan's, not this time, it's something else. Something similar though. As he rounds a corner in the corridor, he freezes dead in his tracks. Wait, is this actually a demonic realm? With a psychotic little grin, he confirms it to himself. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. No wonder it felt so familiar. That demonic energy is unforgettable. And beyond that, the demonic beasts crawling all over this place. They've even recreated those same vile creatures that terrorized the continent centuries ago, always doing the absolute worst things imaginable. Completely refusing to believe it, Aster says, so this is Frizen's doing. That filthy rat. Inside the control room for the test field, Frizen is practically praying, saying this is a genuine success. An actual demonic beast has manifested. The demonic realm has fully taken shape. Before, it was only ever a partial success, just demonic energy showing up on its own. But this time it's complete, and it's all thanks to that ancient artifact. With spatial isolation, he slipped in without a single fight, and using the corrosion from the demonic energy, he seized the control room outright. He didn't just take control, he actually manifested the demonic realm itself. Truly a beautiful thing to witness. Right behind him, the hooded man shows up, asking if it was really a success, and whether Frizen half-assed the job. Frizen says just generating the demonic energy alone already fulfills his contract. The professor thereafter is going to fall apart on his own. But the mysterious man says he doesn't care how it happens, as long as Zenian Academy, the thing protecting that professor, ends up destroyed. Everything's fine. Frizen bows, agreeing of course, calling him the guard dog of the great and powerful Weimar family. The bushy-haired man snaps back that if he wants to keep breathing, he better not let that filthy mouth of his say his family's name again. The kid thinks, still, this guy's nothing more than some Declan lackey, an absolute coward. But once this contract wraps up, the Weimars are going to hand him his own lab, so he can put up with him until then. And more importantly, pulling off a demonic realm means fulfilling the cult's wish, and he's positively giddy just thinking about it, since he's helping the Forbidden Magic Society, the one they call Salvation, and the old geezers are going to be drooling over him in support. The hooded man asks Frizen how much time's left until he locks down full control of the core, since a student's approaching. Frizen asks, what do you mean, a student? Seems like the first test subject just showed up. The hooded man beside him asks, what do you mean, test subject? Frizen asks if he's not curious what happens when a human gets exposed to that much demonic energy at once. Maybe they lose their mind, or drop dead on the spot. poisoned by it. Yeah, everyone already knows that part. But according to the old texts, it's different for humans carrying mana or ether, beastification, turning them into beasts driven purely by madness. Our boy wonders what to do now. Golems behind him, demonic beasts ahead, nowhere left to run. Only option is forward. He thinks he doesn't want anyone worrying over this. But to Friesen's surprise, our boy looks straight up, staring right into the magic eye watching him. Friesen freezes in shock, realizing the kid is literally talking to him, telling him to wait. Friesen, the hooded man, startled, asks if he's seen this kid before. Friesen says no, he has no idea who this brat even is, wondering since when this kid even knows his name, and who the hell he is. To Friesen's absolute shock, our boy conjures something out of his clothes, 3 bracelets. Friesen recognizes them instantly. Those are test bracelets, but figures that can't possibly be right. That's impossible. Yet he watches the kid charge straight at the golems, taking down and shattering every single one, and especially the demonic beasts. And as he moves past them, he clips the bracelets onto their bodies, saying from now on, they're going to start killing each other. Back in the control room, Friesen's in absolute shock, saying this can't be happening. He can't do this to his babies. But right after, he notices something even stranger. What the hell is this kid? How is he this fast? He screams at the guy beside him, telling him he needs to stop this kid right now, no matter the cost, watching as the demonic beasts and golems get taken down one by one by Aster. Just a few seconds later, our boy blasts the whole entrance apart, storming straight into the control room, appearing right in front of both of them, saying it's been a while. Finally, they meet again. While that's happening, in another scene, Chenbi says he's finally found Damien too. With a whole line of golems trailing him, Damien announces that all of these golems are his buddies, Cerberus 1, 2, and 3. Right beside Chenbi, a white-haired girl shows up, asking how he even got here alone. But the second Chenbi looks at her, he spots the bracelet on her wrist, and starts screaming for everyone to throw their bracelets away immediately. The golems are tracking them through the signal. The white-haired girl just stares at her own bracelet like it's nothing at all. But standing beside her, someone else speaks up, saying that's ridiculous, this is a test site, why would anyone trust this guy and toss their own bracelet? He asks, dead serious, if Chenbi's actually trying to steal everyone's bracelets right now. That's when Chenbi freezes in shock, wondering where the hell this guy is even pulling that idea from. The kid and his friends turn to stare down Chenbi. Really on edge, he asks if they actually think the bracelets don't matter. They're wired straight into the control system, acting as trackers. The kid in front of him asks how he even figured that out, and Chenbi says Aster told him. The kid flashes a little smirk, saying of course that's what he'd say. Sounds like Chenbi got played by that gray zone trash, and that's why he threw his own bracelet away. Now he's trying to get everyone else to do the same, basically running a scam on the whole group. Seems like the type who prefers playing solo in class, and just got corrupted by that street rat's influence. Hearing that, Chenbi goes furious, grinding his teeth, thinking if this guy doesn't know a damn thing, the least he could do is shut his mouth. His friend is literally out there saving everyone right now, fighting off golems. But right then, to Chenbi's surprise, Damien speaks up beside him, saying that when he first met Aster, he asked him what he had going for him. Without missing a beat, Aster answered that he had a friend. That's exactly why he trusts him, his one and only friend. Right after, Damien pulls off his own bracelet and tosses it on the ground like it's nothing, telling them to take as many as they want. Then he calls Chenbi to leave with him. Chenbi, trailing behind, stares at his friend, wondering why he's acting like this. He's never seen Damien behave this way before. Meanwhile, back with our boy, he's staring down those two villains, saying, it's been a while, Friesen. Finally, they meet again. There was even a time he went straight into the demonic realm itself just to take him down, though he never expected to run into him right here. Friesen, seriously rattled, says this guy's a complete lunatic. He doesn't even know him. What demonic realm is he even talking about? He calls the hooded man dog, begging him to protect him right now. The so-called guard dog asks if this is the first time he's actually being exposed like this. Friesen, furious, confirms, yeah, that's right. The masked man says he understands, and takes a step forward, telling the kid this is what the contract requires. He has no choice, he just has to kill him, leaving no trace behind. Watching that supposed guard dog take shape, our boy recognizes him instantly, one of the Weimars, a vassal family under the Declans. Their secret wind magic, a prestigious bloodline known for their speed and piercing power, similar to an archer's. The ones bred separately, the rejected offspring, they're called the dog, the one who acts as the actual hunting hound on the front lines for a hunter. Aster, still not quite convinced, asks why a Weimar dog is running around with a rat like this one. Hearing that, the masked man looks genuinely surprised, asking if he actually knows who they are. Furious, our boy starts shouting, saying he asked first, why is a Weimar dog with this rat? Our boy wonders what's wrong with this lunatic. Sounds like he already knows he's going to die, but even without asking, what would he even do with the answer? Doesn't change a damn thing. Still, more or less out of stubbornness, our boy asks again why the Weimar dog is with a rat like him, demanding an answer right now. The dog gets seriously pissed, telling him to stop repeating the same thing, and lunges straight at him. Our boy dodges his attacks with ease, already appearing right in front of him, asking again why the Vmar dog is with this rat. Furious, the dog forms a magic circle, telling him to knock it off already. If he already knows him, why is he so obsessed with this out of nowhere? He activates his magic, and his axes get enchanted, materializing behind Aster, ready to skewer him. But once again, Aster just keeps charging forward, repeating the same question. That's the final straw for the dog, absolutely losing it. He charges straight at Aster, wondering why the hell this bastard can't just shut his mouth. With soul return magic layered on top of rotation and speed enchantments, there shouldn't have been any way to dodge those axes. But to the dog's shock, our boy appears right in front of him, commenting that he's way too stressed out, easily weaving around the boomerang axes without breaking stride. Right after, Aster mentions he's made dogs like this before. And here's something he knows. Dogs get anxious when they keep hearing the same loud noise over and over, exactly like right now. The dog, absolutely furious, snaps that he's the bastard here, treating him like an actual dog. Aster just says straight to his face, that's because he is an actual dog, a Declan dog. Off in the distance, sweating bullets, Friesen watches in shock, wondering what the hell the dog thinks he's doing. If he loses to this kid, they're both dead. Right at that moment, Aster activates his ability, collision style, landing a devastating punch straight into the dog, making him spit blood through his mask. Watching that, Friesen is terrified. But he gets even more scared when our boy calls out to him again, saying it looks like he's still hiding behind someone else, but now it's just the two of them left. Friesen quickly grabs something in his hand, asking why he's acting so confident when he's just some spoiled brat. But right then, to Friesen's horror, his own arm gets sliced clean off. He starts screaming in agony, missing an arm, asking, terrified, what the hell Aster's doing and who he even is. He begs him not to come any closer. Looking behind him, he spots a sphere and thinks about the demonic realm. This is definitely a demonic realm. So, mid-panic, spiraling into pure madness, he says if Aster kills him, he won't be able to stop the demonic realm. And if that's his plan, he's basically leaving his own friends to die inside it. But to Friesen's surprise, Aster just says, so what? He starts walking slowly toward him, saying fine, he'll wait, right up until the demonic realm devours everyone. Friesen can enjoy this while it lasts, but he'll definitely be next. So laugh all he wants, because soon enough, there's not going to be any laughing left in him. After getting genuinely terrified, Friesen starts trying to piece together what this psycho actually has planned. This isn't just demonic energy, it's an entire demonic realm on its own. And somehow, Aster doesn't care one bit that his own friends could get devoured by demonic monsters. Friesen's stuck questioning whether this guy is even still human. Panicking, he says only he can stop the demonic realm, and in 5 minutes, every one of Aster's friends is going to die. Aster, completely unfazed, says yeah, they're going to die. The bushy-haired man confirms, exactly. So why is he doing this? But Aster's suddenly right in front of him, asking if he really wants to know the reason, already snapping his other arm while he says it. Meanwhile, Friesen realizes he stole his own artifact. Our boy stares at the object, wondering if Friesen genuinely thought he was the only one who could use it, and slips the sphere onto his own hand. He sighs, saying the memories are coming back to him. He places his hand over the sphere, starting to command the demonic realm. Friesen beside him wonders how this is even possible. Aster is doing the exact same thing he was doing. Right in front of him, Aster asks how he could ever forget the man who taught the young master forbidden magic. That very same forbidden magic that let the young master walk away alive, all thanks to the blood running through his veins. But he himself wasn't nearly as lucky. The Declan slapped him with countless crimes and sentenced him to execution. That's exactly why he came after him. He didn't want to hand him over to the Declans. He says he thinks he watched him for a good long while, never got so lost that he lost track of how much time had passed. He took pride in being able to track down anyone on the continent, but him, Friesen, was the one he could never find. And he was clever too, ran hard. He searched the gray zones, the ghettos scattered across the kingdoms, even the Empire's criminal underworld. There wasn't a single place he didn't tear apart looking for him, his own hands stained with blood the whole way through. After hunting and hunting some more, he finally figured out that the place he'd been hiding this whole time was the demonic realm itself. He laughs at himself, confirming, yeah, that demonic realm. He genuinely thought he was going to lose his mind in there, unable to find him no matter what. The demonic beasts kept throwing themselves at him non-stop, the demonic energy slowly rotting his body and eating away at his mind. But eventually he gave up on the demonic realm and decided to leave. A mercenary was waiting outside, saying he had news, though he didn't have the guts to step inside the demonic realm himself, so he just waited outside. He asks Friesen if he knows what that news was, that he was dead. The Declans had gotten their hands on him, ripped every last piece of information about his forbidden magic and the artifact right out of him. He says he genuinely felt hollow after that, sat in front of the demonic realm for days, just staring at the sky, collapsed on the ground. Friesen says he genuinely has no idea what he's talking about. Compared to a young master from any noble family, he's nothing but a servant. But Aster steps toward him, pulling out a potion vial, saying he's bleeding way too much, figures he didn't pay enough attention to that. Says he can't die yet, needs to rest a little, and listen to the rest of the story. He forces the potion down Friesen's throat. Friesen wonders why he's getting saved out of nowhere. but he figures this might be his shot. He needs to find an opening to survive, no matter what it takes. After making Friesen drink the potion, our boy keeps going with his story. He says one day, while he was staring up at the sky, a wyvern flew right above him, and that day it looked incredibly free. When he looked at himself, he felt like a complete idiot. His revenge had stopped being about his fallen companions a long time ago. It had just turned into some kind of emotional outlet for himself. So he wiped that revenge from his head entirely. While Aster's talking, Friesen realizes this is the exact moment he needs to run. But before he can do anything, our boy grabs his head, saying, "Well, look at that. He finally found him today. And yeah, this long wait is finally over." That's exactly why he kept chasing down every scrap of knowledge Friesen left behind. The demonic realm, the forbidden magic, that disgusting artifact. He even describes in exact detail how each of his companions died. And lucky for him, the one thing he's got right now is time. So he's going to recreate every single detail of that pain, piece by piece. Should be a pretty fun time for both of them. Watching Aster, Friesen freezes in shock, realizing he's staring at a complete lunatic, and he can't even scream in pain. Right after that, the scene shifts to another location, where the instructors and assistants pour into the test field, scrambling to search for the students. Finally, the one who comes down looking for them is a professor who is absolutely livid. She grumbles that this is such a pain, she just burned nearly 2 hours dismantling some garbage ancient magic, and there's no way she's letting anyone die on her watch. Right then, an assistant appears behind the professor, saying every spell's been dismantled, and the magic eye system's been restored. Professor Felina orders them to prioritize the survivors over chasing down the intruders, and says they absolutely cannot make any public announcement, since there's no telling how people would react. They need to hunt through the magic eyes, or go find the students themselves. Both of them acting like children. The assistants scatter after the students, finding some badly injured, others weirdly hyped up, golems still chasing them down. In the middle of all that chaos, Felina watches, wondering what in the world is going on. The intruders had full control of the trial corridor for nearly 2 hours, and somehow there wasn't a single fatality. From inside a magic orb, someone asks if Professor Felina can hear him. She confirms she can, recognizing Perun's voice instantly. Perun says he's made it into the internal control room, and she asks if he can pull up the crystal display. Better she sees this for herself. The second she opens the feed, she's hit with pure shock at the scene in front of her. Perun mentions it was just 2 intruders, and she can see exactly what state they ended up in, completely wrecked. The professor thinks she's seen plenty of strange things in her life, but even for her, this is too much. She finds herself wondering, who could have possibly done this to them? But then she remembers something odd. Another professor had handed her a file on that same student, said he was a surprise child from the gray zone, admitted through the Blander family's entry rights. And as she can clearly see, he'd triggered a limit exceeded error during his mana test. Felina says this is way beyond anything a student should be capable of. The other professor agrees, saying she doesn't know exactly what he is, but that student needs to be watched closely. Back in the present, behind Felina, someone shows up, saying he's running a little late. She recognizes him instantly, her own boss, the academy's headmaster. The old man says he got here as fast as he possibly could, but it looks like it's already over. Felina says there wasn't much she could actually do. He'd come all the way from the eastern side of the continent just to get here. The old man says even so, thanks to her, everything turned out fine, and he'd been right to trust her with this. But after a moment, once she's finished explaining everything, he asks, dead serious, so what she's saying is, the one responsible for all of this was just some kid? The following night, Aster finds himself thinking, every mage carries something called an inner demon, some cursed thing that seems to surface out of any warning sign and completely destabilize the mind. And more often than not, it never ends well. Back in Aster's past life, he never had anything like that. As a mercenary, he just did whatever he was told to do, and even watching companions die was just part of the job. If he hadn't died to forbidden magic, he probably never would have felt this kind of rage. He thought he'd already buried it deep, but it exploded inside the trial corridor, and somehow that ended up planting the seed of his own inner demon. Aster comments that this whole thing feels like the old days, like carrying a bomb strapped to his chest, one that could go off at any second. Still, he wonders who he really is, deep down just an old mercenary, and nothing feels more familiar to him than uncertainty itself. Honestly, this level of tension is practically comforting at this point. With that in mind, today, a week after the whole trial corridor incident, now that things have settled down, this is his perfect shot. Physically and mentally, he's at his absolute best right now. So he pulls out the secret grimoire, the Crimson Flame Grimoire, thinking, finally, it's time to actually read this thing. As he reads, he thinks about how the secret art he learned in his past life had no fixed element, just a generic technique handed to mercenaries. Learning an elemental secret art like the Crimson Flame is something completely new for him. That's exactly why he reads through the first chapter dozens and dozens of times, double-checking every single time that he's actually getting it right. The primary mana circuits aren't all that different from the ones used in the Celestial Fountain art, but running mana through them is enough on its own to give it a fire-based quality. What that actually means in practice, you need a clear mental image. The shape of that image has to be crisp. A single solitary flame, needing nothing else, born from mana but able to keep burning even without it. A flame that doesn't need oxygen. A flame that lives inside your own heart. He activates the ignition spell and immediately realizes, holy crap, this thing is ridiculously powerful compared to the attributeless mana he normally works with. This spell's output is basically double. Except, for now, one cast is already his limit. The recoil on this is way harsher than regular mana. Attempting collision style with fire mana right now is completely out of the question. Kind of a bummer he can't pull it off yet, but everything in its own time, he'll get there eventually. Even so, he figures he's one step closer to that miserable bastard. The Celestial Fountain magic just picked up the fire attribute at its base, and now he needs an actual spell worth casting with it. Either way, fire element magic doesn't require nearly as much compatibility between the secret art and the spell itself, so he should be able to make basically anything work right now. Changing gears, he stares at the door, wondering what this weird sensation is. It's a pretty unusual presence, and whoever it belongs to isn't exactly being subtle about it. He walks over and swings the door open in one motion. To Aster's surprise, the old headmaster is standing there, saying he understands exactly why Professor Felina's been suspicious. Decent perception on his part, and clean control over that treacherous fire mana. Genuinely a different kind of kid. Our boy stares at the headmaster, saying he'd rather just call him headmaster. But right after, the old man's expression turns serious, and he mentions he's already dropped a massive amount of pressure onto Aster. Aster thinks, great, what the hell is happening now? This old guy's exactly like everyone else. Always looks a little too pleased whenever someone actually reacts to him. But he thinks first and foremost, he's an old mercenary, and he'd rather break than bow, an unshakable rule for himself. The old man, standing right in front of him, asks if he's not going to offer some kind of greeting. He might not look like it, but he's the highest authority in this entire academy. Our boy gets seriously annoyed, but ends up yelling, "It's a pleasure to meet you, headmaster," while thinking to himself deep down that his hips just weren't built for bowing. The old man says, a little awkwardly, that he has impeccable manners for greeting someone, but maybe he could tone down the volume. Our boy yells again, saying his voice must be way too loud, apologizing once more. The old man, dead serious, says he can scream as loud as he wants, no one's going to hear a thing, since he's already sealed off every sound in the area. Our prota gets irritated, realizing this old man is seriously sharp, but he stares him down, asking what actually brought him here. The headmaster explains he came with a few questions, and he's going to get honest answers to them, whether Aster likes it or not. He sits down and asks if the kid isn't going to sit too, activating that pressure one more time. Our boy realizes this isn't magic at all, it's basically raw mana. The old man's projecting all that pressure using nothing but mana itself. The headmaster says, seriously, that Professor Felina told him he seems to be hiding something, so he's just going to ask directly what that is. That nearly drops our boy to his knees. Gritting his teeth, he thinks, damn it, is this seriously the same guy who was stumbling over his words during the speeches in the Great Hall? He must have been hiding his real power the entire time. An absolute monster. But compared to that bastard, this guy's still nothing. He decides to read the mana flow pressing down on him, and match his own mana to sync with it. Once the flows line up, the recoil vanishes entirely, like placing his own hands right into the other man's current. Using that indirect method, he cuts through the old man's pressure, and comments, judging by his actions, that he probably came because of the trial corridor. Aster says it flat out, no dancing around it, he was the one who wiped out those rats. The old man's expression turns serious, staring him down, asking if he's not even going to try hiding that. Our prota says it's not like he's actively trying to hide anything, it would have been better if no one found out, sure, but it's also not something he particularly cares about keeping secret. The old man asks if there's anything else to ask, staring our prota down hard. Our boy thinks, ugh, this feeling is exactly like that time he ate wyvern meat. Next time, he's definitely going to hunt down an orphaned wyvern all by himself. Watching the kid, the old man just lets out a chuckle, rests a hand on his own head, and gets lost in thought for a second. Our boy sitting across from him realizes the headmaster is basically a rare kind of lunatic too. Serious, then normal, serious again, then smiling. Right after, the old man comments that this look on him isn't bad at all, and here's how it's going to go. He'll ask the questions, and the kid answers whatever he can. Beats getting beaten up for no reason. He asks him to sit. Once our prota sits down, the two of them stare each other down. Our boy realizes the atmosphere has clearly shifted from before, something far more feral now, like a true war mage. This presence, this whole aura, this has got to be who he really is underneath it all. A man far beyond just the title of headmaster. But before the old man can say anything else, our boy cuts in, asking if by any chance he knows about a wyvern that turned into someone's dinner. That completely catches the old man off guard, asking what the hell he means by that. Our prota says it's nothing, and tells him to keep going. The old man calls him junior. Our boy pushes back, saying he's a student, not the old man's junior, and he's literally the headmaster. The old man threatens him, saying if he says something that stupid again, he's going to get a serious beating. If he's younger, he's a junior, and that makes the old man his senior. There are no professors on the battlefield. Our boy wonders what the hell he's even talking about. They're standing in an academy, not on a battlefield, but he goes along with it anyway, calling him senior. The old man says he's pretty obedient, and says he'll keep going. He asks his junior, already flashing that war mage stare, exactly what kind of scum those guys were that made him leave them in that state. Aster finally realizes all that hostility isn't aimed at him at all. It's aimed at the intruders. On the other hand, Aster asks what exactly he's planning to do about all this, and the old man says he's going to crush them. He says His Majesty the Emperor is going to sign off on this, and that he needs to round up his old companions one more time. Our boy, hearing that, thinks if these are his old companions, they've got to be war mages, or knights who've actually fought alongside him before, definitely not regular people. He tells the old man it was the Declans, but the old man just stares him down and asks if by any chance he knows a mage who ended up as wyvern food. Our boy says no, and the old man says, well, neither does he, and that's exactly why he's picking up on the inconsistency in that answer. He asks what Aster's hiding. Our boy realizes this old man is as sharp as ever, and thinks it'd honestly be great if he could just pin all of this on the Declans. But in the end, he admits it was the Vimars. The old man asks, what do you mean the Vimars? Both members of the family. Aster corrects him, no, only one of them is actually a Vimar. The other one's a magical engineer, Frizzine. The old man asks if he's got any proof of that, and our boy shoots back, asking if he wants everything handed to him on a silver platter. The old man, staying pretty calm, comments that he talks pretty insolently for his age, but fine, he wants to know how Aster met the two of them. Our boy just shakes his head, and the old man reads it loud and clear, he's not talking. Aster starts answering a bunch of the old man's other questions instead, and after a while the headmaster says he understands. Our boy realizes he's already said everything he needed to say. He tried to answer as honestly as he could, but obviously couldn't bring up anything about the regression or the grimoire. Even so, he can tell just how irritated the old man is, probably because his answers left way too much out. Still, the old man calls him Junior again, and asks if by any chance he knows the mage who ended up as goblin food, because he still feels like something's missing here. Our Prota, playing dumb, says it's just a misunderstanding. The old man just tells him not to smile at him with those goblin eyes of his. Our Prota agrees, thinking to himself how insanely sharp this old man is. Right after, the headmaster mentions he wants to build a library as tall as a tower. That's his big dream. He tells Aster that if he leaves the top floor empty, he'll fill an entire wall of shelves just for him. Our boy just says thanks, thinking, yeah, as expected, the world really does run on blood ties, regional ties, or academic ties. The old man also mentions that regarding the academy admission ticket, he'll hand it over as a favor. Our Prota thinks, ugh, great. The headmaster tells him to be careful with that look, reminding him he doesn't need two eyes to see the world clearly. Our boy smiles, a little nervous, saying he's genuinely curious what kind of favor he's going to end up owing. The old man says fine, the favor can wait, they'll sort that out when the time's right. Moving on, he brings up the artifact, saying it's tied to the demonic realm, extremely dangerous, but also useful in plenty of ways. Its spatial isolation function is definitely going to help with building that tower of his. Our Prota thinks, yeah, true, the artifact's spatial isolation had rendered even the magic circles inside the trial corridor completely useless. If it's magic that even the Academy's own professor couldn't crack, it could be seriously useful for protecting the tower. But there's one problem. He tells the old man he has no idea how the actual magical technology behind it works. The old man tells him that in that case, he should talk to Professor Felina, and he'll personally pull some strings to arrange that conversation, since she's definitely someone he can trust. Even so, while deciding not to dig any further into his own identity, he already knows it's going to be tough convincing Professor Felina to just let things go. The old man tells Aster this is how they'll handle it, and starts walking him through the plan. The next day finally arrives. Our boy is at the library, reading a book, sipping his coffee, taking it easy. Right then, Chenbi and Damien show up. Damien says it's been a while since they've all hung out. Our Prota looks a little surprised, since apparently the two of them have gained a bit of weight. He asks what happened to them, why they're looking so puffy. Chenbi just bursts out laughing. Off to the side, some random kid stops by to say good morning to Chenbi, asking if he's still training with him later. Chenbi says of course, yeah, he'll train with him too. On the other side, a girl walks up to Damien, thanking him for what he did during the trial corridor. Damien brushes it off, says it was nothing. Chenbi explains, thanks to what Aster said about the bracelets that day, everyone's still going on about how grateful they are. Their friends gave them gifts as thanks, and even their parents pitched in to help their families out a little. So he genuinely thanks Aster, catching our boy completely off guard. But Aster says he doesn't think he deserves thanks for this. He never asked Chenbi to do anything. It was Chenbi's own choice to go help everyone. That change came from him. But he asks Chenbi what Damien ended up doing this time. Chenbi says Damien basically found a golem and started controlling it with plant magic, and then did the exact same thing over and over with a bunch of other golems. Our boy realizes his buddy is genuinely strong, and he doesn't even have a proper attribute to work with. Chenbi suggests they all sit down and catch up a bit, since it's been a whole week since they last really talked. There's a lot to cover. But right then, someone else shows up behind the two of them, saying she's got plenty to discuss with Aster too. Professor Felina appears, telling Aster she wants some one-on-one time with him. The two of them head off toward her office, and along the way she asks Aster if he knows why she called him in. Our boy says he doesn't think it's for a little pep talk. She confirms, exactly right. She's already heard the story, a descendant of an old war mage, and the mastermind behind that whole incident, supposedly being Friesen. Our boy confirms, yeah, all of them are trash. Felina says anyone tied to the Declans counts as trash, speaking pretty broadly. Our prota thinks this is exactly the cover story the headmaster set up for him, drawing attention toward his connection to the Blanders as some secret identity would have been way too dangerous. So instead, they decided to make him out as a descendant of an old war mage who wandered the continent hiding who he really was. That same day, the headmaster had told him they'd also make this so-called master of his someone who held a grudge against the Declans, or against Friesen specifically, since that actually lined up with what Aster genuinely felt inside. The whole cover story fit perfectly. Felina says, either way, there are still plenty of suspicious details here, but given what the headmaster told her, she'll let it slide for now. Right before that though, out of nowhere, she blushes, saying that for the time being she's going to cover the whole thing up, since he doesn't seem like a threat to the academy. To her surprise, our boy leans in a little closer and tells Felina he's really sorry, but he's a student and she's a professor, and the age gap kind of complicates things. That catches her seriously off guard, leaving her even more flustered by that random comment out of nowhere, and whatever she ends up saying back to him.